Evening Words.
Information is power.
Ladies and gentlemen, get ready, here come
Dr. James Peterson.
And I'm banging on your eardrum.
On WURD 900 AM and 96.1 FM, Philadelphia.
Welcome to Evening Words. I'm your host, Dr. James Peterson. We are live on WURD 900 AM, 96.1 FM. I'm so excited to be here. What a tough act to follow. Shout out to the entire WURD for the Word on Democracy programming all day. Incredible interview with Solomon Jones and Vice President Harris and all the folks they spoke to in the Biden administration over the course of the day. So I'm honored and excited to be here. I'm in Philadelphia, folks, and I'm continuing this momentous and historic day at WURD with a program we've called What is Owed, a reparations roundtable, and I am honored to be joined right up front at the top of the hour with Council Member Jamie Gautier from the 3rd District and Council Member Kendra Brooks at large. Councilwoman, welcome to Evening Words.
Thank you for having us.
It's sorry we got off to a little bit of a late start, but you know when the VP sits down in the seat,
absolutely,
you kind of have to take that interview. Councilwoman Gautier, if you could start us off here, we're exploring reparations from a wide range of situations and regions and subject matter expertise over the course of the next 3 hours, but we wanted to start right here at home. And we really wanted to start with you and with Councilmember Brooks to share with our audience kind of what started the process of you working to establish the reparations task force here in the great city of Philadelphia. What was the germ? How did it get started?
I'm actually going to toss that to my colleague, Councilmember Brooks.
Awesome.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Councilmember Gautier, for her leadership in getting this task force up and running, and for Brianna Moore and Rashawn Williams, who are the co-chairs, for stepping up to lead this task force. Mm-hmm. What we knew going into this is that every day we see the ongoing impact of slavery and racist policies on the people here in Philadelphia. We know that Black children still have fewer resources and opportunities than white children. We know that Black families are still suffering from poverty and violence and dangerous conditions far higher than that of white people, white families. Mm-hmm. And for me, as a restorative practitioner, I believe that we cannot escape this cycle of poverty and violence without addressing the original causes of harm. And reparations are a way to make up hundreds of years of exploitation and move towards equality that Black people have always deserved. Mm-hmm. And we realized that this task force would be able to help educate people about our country's long history of stolen labor and stolen wealth. Mm-hmm. And we'll have the opportunity to study history and help us to share this information with others. We knew that a task force would be able to grow our coalitions. Mm-hmm. Studies show that support for reparations has been steadily increasing over the past few decades, and we must build on that support and call more people into this movement around racial justice, and ultimately just bringing hope to people who have already received so many broken promises. A lot of folks who support the idea of reparations, but very few people believe that anything will actually happen. And we realize that it's up to this task force to start to change that and to help us imagine what healing could look like and show us some pathways to get there. So that's how we kind of came to this point. So I was really glad to work with Councilmember Gautier when we introduced this last June, asking for this formation of this task force. And we passed it with a unanimous vote in City Council. So many people are looking forward to this. And I'm thinking particularly about our ancestors and elders who devoted their entire lives to the movement for racial justice. Mm-hmm. And that right there is really exciting. And I don't think it's going to be easy, but I do believe that with the task force and, the group that we're bringing together, it's possible.
Mm-hmm. Councilmember Gaudier, do you want to add to that, how things got started and what kind of drove you to join this effort?
Sure. So, like Councilmember Brooks just talked about, many of the crises that we see plaguing our community today have their roots in the institution of American slavery and everything that came after that, right? And so, as a city council, when we're talking frequently about poverty, about gun violence, about gentrification, we firmly believe that reparations have to be a part of that conversation, because it was all those things that happened from American slavery since that led our communities to the place where they are today. And so that's why, on the eve of Juneteenth, we introduced the resolution establishing the task force. That's why I think we got unanimous support in City Council, and that's a basis for why we did this in the first place. But the task force in specific will study and develop reparations proposals and programs for Black Philadelphians whose ancestors endured chattel slavery and Jim Crow in the United States. And while we know that there's no way to truly eradicate and fully eradicate the wrongs of the past, the task force will go about the task of recommending concrete steps, whether that's financial, whether that's policy or otherwise, that the city, the state, and the federal government, as well as private companies, family estates, and others can take to eradicate or attempt to make up for the harm and the lingering chokehold that the institution of American slavery has on our society. In Philadelphia, the task force will have 9 members in total, all of whom will be Philadelphians from the descendant community. We already have 2 co-chairs, Brianna Moore and Rashawn Williams, who actually brought this idea to us in the first place. And then we'll have 8 other coordinators focused on very specific areas. So we'll have an economic justice coordinator, a public and post-secondary education coordinator, a health and wellness coordinator, an Atlantic World History coordinator, a human services and community resources coordinator, a criminal and legal justice system coordinator, a law and policy coordinator, and an urban planning and sustainable development coordinator. So you can see that we're coming at this from a very comprehensive standpoint. We've talked to amazing people who have applied for these positions. At this point, we've selected or filled all but 2 of the positions. We had initially planned to launch the task force during Black History Month, and we're close to doing so now, but we really want to take the time to make sure that we have the right people. So we anticipate, having all the members on board and launching sometime in March. And if you're listening at home and you want to be a part of this historic work, go to rep215.com and complete the interest form. Even above the positions that I named, we're going to have different committees. We're going to have a lot of public engagement. So there are a lot of ways for people to connect and become involved. And I'll also be back here on WURD this Saturday morning, talking even more about the task force with Brianna and Rashawn.
Well, so I hope both of you will consider Evening Words here, WRD, your partner in this effort, and I hope you will continue to be with us. We have to take a quick break, but when we come back from the break, I would love for both of you to put on your imagination caps and imagine with me and with our listeners what might be some of the best, most constructive, most impactful outcomes from the great work that you're doing. You're listening to Evening Words. I'm your host, Dr. James Peterson. We are live on WRD, 900 AM, 96.1 FM. We are in the midst of what is owed, the reparations roundtable here on Evening Words, in conversation with Councilmember Jamie Gaudier from the 3rd District and Councilmember Kendrick Brooks at large. We'll be back after these messages.
Time for a traffic update on Word Radio.
Watch for an accident in Lower Merion this afternoon. It's right on City Avenue, southbound at Marion Road. We've got police there directing traffic, heavy volume moving through the area. Heavy on the Blue Route northbound between 95 and Media Swarthmore. We back up on the Vine Expressway in both directions. The entire length we're stacked up, 76 to 95. The Schuylkill is heavy eastbound, Montgomery Drive to University Avenue. Also heavy westbound, University Avenue to Girard Avenue and City Avenue to Belmont Avenue. Watch for heavy delays on 95 northbound Betsy Ross Bridge to Bridge Street, and a crash in Upper Dublin, Limekiln Pike at Jarretttown Road. Police on the scene there. Report brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Progressive Commercial Insurance flexes to fit your business's needs, from quick repairs to adjustable coverages and even payment options. Progressive Commercial makes it easy to get what you need. Get a quote today in as little as 6 minutes at progressivecommercial.com. And for more traffic information, log on to sigalert.com. I'm Jason Lee with your Philadelphia area traffic.
Okay, remember what I told you. Be your own boss. Love yourself. Level up.
Level Up is back. In celebration of Women's History Month, Level Up returns highlighting Black women-owned businesses who are making a difference in our communities. In partnership with WVON Chicago and KJLH Los Angeles, this signature initiative gives you the opportunity to nominate your business or one of your favorite Black woman-owned businesses a chance to become one of 5 finalists who will be featured in a Shark Tank-like style pitch party, where the winner will be selected by a panel of independent corporate sector judges and will receive a grand prize valued at $5,000. Get ready! The submission process opens soon. Stay tuned to WURD for more exciting details. Level Up 2024 is brought to you by Comcast, the Pennsylvania Lottery, Keystone First, and Bank of America.
Level up, level up, level up.
What's up, everybody? My name is Dr. Victory Anyam. I own my own practice in Wynwood called Victory Chiropractic and Performance. I'm a chiropractor with a specialty in sports medicine, and I specialize in getting you out of pain as quickly as possible by helping you get to the root cause of why it's happening and making sure it doesn't happen again in the future. If I can help, please reach out to my office by calling us at 610-642-2300.
Tune in to Eagle Word Magazine, hosted by POC, the first Friday at 10 a.m. for the PA Lottery Eagle Word Fact of the Month. Brought to you by PA Lottery, benefiting older Pennsylvanians every day.
It's time for an NBC 10 First Alert weather update.
Above normal temperatures for the next few days. It'll feel like spring, including today with sunshine, a few clouds, 58 the high this afternoon. Even warmer for Tuesday and Wednesday. Tomorrow, sunshine in the morning, but clouds come in the afternoon with showers likely, a high of 64. The shower chances go up Tuesday evening. By Wednesday, we've got scattered showers in the morning, mild in the afternoon, back up to 65. It'll be a breezy day with rain turning steadier later Wednesday into Wednesday night. I'm NBC 10 First Alert meteorologist Bill Henley.
Where's the professor? Microphone check, 1, 2, here we go.
And now back to Evening Words with Dr. James Peterson on WURD, Progressive Black Talk Media.
Welcome back to Evening Words. I'm your host, James Peterson. We are live here on WRD, 900 AM, 96.1 FM. This is What is Owed, the reparations movements in the 21st century, a roundtable about the subject with experts from around the nation discussing, and we're starting right here at home with our great council members, Councilmember Jamie Gaudier from the 3rd District and Councilmember Kendra Brooks at large. Welcome back to Evening Words. We had a little bit of a break there where I'm hoping we all used our imaginations to think about what might be the most prudent, the most impactful, the most consequential outcomes of the great work that you all are beginning to do with the Reparations Task Force here in Philadelphia.
Well, we don't want to commit the task force to specific recommendations before the task force is formed or launched.
I got it.
But I do think this should be thought about broadly, right? It could take many forms. It could be a cash payment. I think that's the most familiar thing that people think about when they think about reparations, and that's completely valid, and it has been done before in our country, particularly with, I believe, Japanese citizens in our country who experience harm at the hands of the government. It could also be, resources to try to make up for the harm that has been done to Black people through the housing market. In Evanston, Illinois, for example, they committed to $10 million in reparations using money from, I think, the legalization of cannabis. And that money will go towards helping to stabilize housing in Black communities. So they're going to, help people to invest in their current homes. They're going to help more Black members of their community get into home ownership. It could take a lot of different forms. I'll toss it over to Councilmember Brooks.
I want to add to that, Liz. One of my biggest passions is education, and we saw this just recently in our education lawsuit that that it's been a huge disinvestment in Philadelphia, and with that, we can definitely make investments in our young people through schools, parks, and recs. And I just want to give a immediate example. Years of advocacy has led to a new building at T.M. Pierce, and I went into the building, was in tears.
Wow.
Because in my years of teaching restorative practices, every school I visited in Lower Merion, which is right across the street, was just as beautiful as this one school in North Philadelphia that has been repaired. I think it's the first school in like 70 years to be a brand new building. That is something that can come out, because it can come out of this, because investments in our young people is a greater investment in our future. And I'm talking about like state of the art schoolyards. It just blew my mind what I saw, like a full kitchen.
That's right.
And colorful chairs. I mean, that seems so small.
Not to me. I'm an educator. That seems big.
But when kids walk into this building and see this magnificent space just for them, all of our kids throughout Philadelphia deserve that. And that's an investment that we can make for our young people, especially since our schools and our young people have been so divested in for years and generations.
Yeah, thank you for that, both of you. I appreciate that. As we, continue the conversation, folks in our listening audience are like, reparations now, like, let's do it now. Can we talk a little bit about why it's important for the task force to do its research, to study the issue, to see best practices? I know that the deliberate sort of methodological approach to this may not be satisfactory to all of my listeners or to all of your constituents, but there's a really important reason why you have to do your homework first on something like this. Can you talk a little bit about why education in this space, doing research, identifying best practices, actually might help the outcomes be more robust for the task force once it gets up and running?
There are going to be a lot of critics out there, right? Or people who just don't immediately buy into this argument. And so I think that we have to make our recommendations based on data about what happened and about how that harm has impacted Black people since slavery. I also think that as we make our recommendations, we want for the recommendations to be meaningful. We want them to positively impact the lives of Black people here in the city of Philadelphia. So we want to be thoughtful about them. So in Evanston, for example, they decided to focus on housing because not only because that was what most people in that area wanted to see, but because Black people in their area were so harmed in particular by racism in the housing market. So I think going about this in a systematic way that's based on data, that's based on facts, will help us to ward off, undue criticisms, bring more people to our side, and come up with recommendations that will be meaningful for the lives of people here in our city.
Councilmember Brooks, you want to weigh on that?
I mean, to add, this could be like a once in a lifetime investment right here in this city, and it's important that we get it right if we're going to make sure that this is sustainable and has lasting results for our community. It's important that we do it correct. And I think the research and the data and pulling everyone together at the table is how we get there. It can't be just like haphazardly done. It's important that these investments, this is building legacy, and this is making sure that our young people have the opportunity to benefit, for something that we didn't have for generations before us. And I think that that's why it's important that we do our due diligence to get this right the first time.
I think that this is not something, that Philadelphia can fully repair on its own. And so I think we will need support from the state and the federal government, and I think we might have to do some case making for them. And so that's another reason that I think it'll be important to go about this in a thoughtful way that's based on data, to show to other parties, and to push them to adopt this cause as well.
Thank you both for that. As we're thinking about this, we're talking about a lot of different issues here, right? Housing, education. You mentioned healthcare earlier, and there are different philosophies from different reparations practitioners in the space at both the local levels and national levels. Some of them we'll be talking to later on in this program. But I'm curious as to your opinions about this, because this is a tough question to ask. Should reparations focus exclusively on what is owed from institutional chattel slavery, or should it be looking across the sort of complexity of the various outgrowths? Should it be considering Jim Crow? Should it be considering redlining? Should it be, there are a lot of things that come out of that, but there are some folks who philosophically say, let's look at the mathematics of chattel slavery, let's look at the labor, let's look at what is owed from there, let's get the folks who can trace their descendancy through that process and focus on that. It sounds like we're positioning the Philadelphia Task Force to think a little bit more comprehensively than that, but I'm curious as to, is that strategic? I don't think there's a better or worse way to address the challenge. I think we have to just confront the challenges head on. But from your perspective, should reparations limit its focus to the subject of chattel slavery itself, that particular history, or should it think about some of these other pieces that you all are already talking about in terms of the disparities that we see in the 21st century that are the outgrowths of chattel slavery?
I think it has to be comprehensive, because that original disease, that sickness, that original wrong of American slavery, the racism that led us to American slavery, also channeled into so many policies that happened afterwards that have impacted Black people in a negative way. Jim Crow, redlining, urban renewal, and so many other forms of systemic racism that are present in virtually every system in our country. So I think this has to be a comprehensive conversation, really aimed at rooting out, the racism and the inequality present within all of those systems.
Councilmember Brooks?
And for me, all that Councilmember Gauthier has just said, but also to add, some of these practices are still in place. So, we have to be very comprehensive and include all of it, because we can't make it seem like this argument is just about what's happened in the past. There are current forms of discrimination and racism that are rooted in every system that we experience right now, and those things should also be included. Like I said, this law case was just, a year ago? We talking about Philadelphia being divested into over generations? So I think that it has to be comprehensive, because we're still living this. So some of us might be living better than our ancestors, but the reality, a lot of these things are still in play.
To Councilmember Brooks's point, if you look at something, if you take a map of neighborhoods in Philadelphia that were redlined, and then you overlay that with a map of where poverty exists, if you overlay that with a map of where gun violence is happening, if you overlay that with where blight is happening, it is virtually the same map.
Yep.
And so you can almost tie a straight line between all of the things that we're attempting to solve and address as a council today and all of these racist policies that the government fully participated in. And that's why it has to be a comprehensive conversation.
We only have a couple of minutes left here, and I want to try to squeeze in two more questions. Thank you so much for your time here. We really appreciate it. First and foremost, there are a lot of folks in the city of Philadelphia who are not descended from enslaved Africans. Some of those folks might say, why do we need to do this? Why, believe it or not, we have some white folks who listen to WRD. Lots of Latino, Latinx folks listen to it. Why does the city or the state or the federal, why does we have to do this? I didn't own any slaves is what they'll say, right? I didn't participate in this. Why should, what do we say to those folks? Because some of the naysayers are going to be in our own community, of course, but some of the naysayers are going to be outside the scope of what a reparations task force is dedicated to. How do we manage those folks who say, hey, I never owned a slave, my family never owned slaves, why should I be supporting this?
I don't really understand that as a government. To me, it makes, as a viewpoint, honestly, to me, it makes perfect sense that the American government at every level would make up for a harm that it did and that there was never redress for. That makes perfect and logical sense, particularly when we can still see the impact of that wrongdoing today. And so I would love to talk to those folks and, hopefully get them to understand that, but I don't fully understand that argument. You don't have to be alive today to support the government making up for harm that it never made up for.
Councilmember Brooks, anything to add there?
I just think about my activist days. We said that when black people are free, we're all free.
All right.
That's it.
All right. Last question. We'll get you out of here on this. So I know folks can join this effort by going to rep215.com. If there's any phone number to share to call as well, as we have a lot of folks here who are not necessarily on the internet, but for those who are thinking about, well, down the line, how do I identify as someone who should be included in this reparations piece? Is there, in your mind right now, should folks be looking at their family histories? Is there going to be some kind of way of saying, hey, this is how you know that my descendants here in the city of Philadelphia, I should be included in whatever restorative outcomes come out of this process? Maybe some folks can start to do their homework now on their own families and their own histories in order to meet that challenge.
We're not looking for any sort of tests like that. We've broadly been communicating to Black Philadelphians who are our descendants or who've been impacted by Jim Crow or these racist policies. That's a very broad group of people. And I think we want to keep it broad. And so if people are interested in participating, they should go to rep215.com. If they want to call, they can reach out to either of our offices. They can call my office at 215-686-0460, and I'll let Councilmember Brooks give her information.
Yes, and they can call my office at 215-686-0461.
Thank you both. So did I miss anything? We got 30 seconds. Did I miss anything? I can't wait to talk to you all again. I hope you will come back on and share more updates and information. We definitely also want to talk to the co-chairs of the task force. But did we miss anything just on this sort of eve of the launch of this important task force?
No, just that folks should listen to Saturdays with City Council on WURD at 10 a.m. this coming Saturday. We'll actually have Brianna and Rashawn on that day as well.
All right.
Councilmember Brooks, Councilmember Jamie Gaudier, thank you so much for joining us here on Evening Words. Wish you all the support, and again, consider us one of your media partners in this work. We are right here with you to do some of that homework and support the efforts for reparations here in the city of Philadelphia.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you both. You're listening to Evening Words. I'm your host, Dr. James Peterson. We are live on WRD, 900 AM, 96.1 FM. Just finished an interview and a conversation with Councilmember Jamie Gaudier from the 3rd District and Councilmember Kendra Brooks at large, who have been spearheading the effort to establish the Reparations Task Force here in the city of Philadelphia. We already have our next guest queued up, so we're looking forward to talking to them, and we'll introduce them to you when we come back after these messages.
PHMC is proud to commemorate Black History Month and be a part of Philadelphia's dynamic culture. We celebrate our diverse and innovative workforce every day. PHMC is a nonprofit public health institute and invites you to explore careers in public health and join the efforts to make an impact in the community. Benefits include a pension plan, tuition discounts, and reimbursements, as well as generous paid time off. Learn about Public Health Management Corporation. Log into mypublichealthcareer.org to view all open positions and find your place in public health.
I need more time to file my taxes. Help.
On irs.gov, you can use IRS Free File to get 6 more months. Or you can submit IRS Form 4868 by the April deadline. If you owe taxes, you can make an electronic payment and get a filing extension with no need to submit Form 4868. Go to irs.gov for details. But remember, an extension of time to file is not an extension of time to pay what you owe.
And now back to Evening Words with Dr. James Peterson on WURD 900 AM and 96.1 FM Philadelphia.
Welcome back to Evening Words. I'm your host, Dr. James Peterson. We are live on WRD 900 AM, 96.1 FM. I want to give another shout out to Council Members Gaudier and Brooks, who gave us some sense of the genesis of Philadelphia's Reparations Task Force and their kind of approach to engaging it and what the purpose of it is. And so we were excited to talk to them and to find out more about that. Please tune in to Councilmember Gaudier on Saturday, where she will interview the co-chairs of that task force and provide more information. We hope to be able to have them back on in the future. I do want to introduce our next set of guests, although I'm not sure if they're both here with us yet. We're in the process of bringing them on. But, you know, the idea with what is owed, this reparations roundtable, is to do a couple of things. One, we started locally, talk to folks here in the city of Philadelphia and see kind of what's going on here. And then two, we want to branch out a bit and go all the way to the state of California to talk to some activists and some reparationists who've been doing the work on the West Coast. So I'm honored here to introduce to the program Miss Camila Moore, who's the chair of the California Reparations Task Force, attorney and reparative justice scholar, and Mr. Jonathan Burgess, who's the author of Gold Rush: Burgess Descendants and descendant of enslaved Gold Rush pioneer Rufus Burgess. Mr. Burgess, Miss Moore, welcome to Evening Words.
Thanks for having me.
Dr. Peterson, it's a pleasure to be on the show and share with you this evening. Daytime our time, evening time yours. So I'm honored to be here.
Thank you so much for coming to us from across the time zone here. We really appreciate your time. You know, we just finished up a conversation with two council members here in the city of Philadelphia who are a part of the effort to launch the Reparations Task Force here in the city. And given the work that both of you have done, and I want to dive a little bit deeper into it over the course of this interview, but given the work that you two have already done, what advice would you give to the team here in Philadelphia that's just kind of getting started with this effort here locally? What advice and best practices can we share with folks who are doing the work here in Philadelphia?
Camila, I think I'll defer that question to you, considering you were the chair of the task force. And I'll weigh in after you, please.
Sure. I think, and I would love to hear your perspective, Jonathan, but I would say for folks in Philly to center the community from the beginning. So that could look like practically, having a robust community engagement process and framework, because under international law, it's actually the community of eligibility that should be dictating what repair looks like to them. So it's not enough for, a 9-person task force or commission to dictate what repair looks like for the community. It's important to collaborate with the community from start to finish.
Excuse my typing. I'm taking notes here, for real. Brother Jonathan, would you want to add to Ms. Moore's comments there?
Sure, yeah, and I'll just be, very specific, and Camila hits a really good point as far as community, but it's how you market and get the message out to the community, and that's inclusive of those that would qualify for the repair, but also the people that just don't know because of what American history has done to our history. And so I think that, investing in the dollars to actually send the message out so that the masses can become educated, both the lineage of the people that qualify and the people that have been misled by what's written in American history. So those are, what I'd say as far as forming the task force. What advice? You've got to have that base, and we saw that in California with, some of it, just people not knowing, not even aware. Even today, I think we've done a better job of people knowing, but there's still a number of people that are unaware. We even have a report that's 1,100 pages.
Wow. Well, so I think I've had access to that report, but I'll have to circle back and check and make sure I do. Ms. Moore, can you take a couple of minutes here and share with us your journey as the chair of this task force? Kind of how long was the process for you? And really what I would love to hear from you is what made you decide to get invested and to commit to doing this work in your own professional trajectory?
Well, yeah, I think my entry point to reparations actually started as a child. I grew up in Leimert Park, California, which is within South Central LA. It's an enclave that if you go there, you'll see, it's surrounded by, pro-blackness, drum circles every Sunday. My mother, I was raised by a single mother. Who instilled in me to have pride in being African American. I learned about, for instance, 40 Acres and a Mule from her as a child. I even, went to the library and read slave narratives. And so, the concept of what's owed, to my people, again, has been with me since I was a child. I was very active in college. I was the chairperson of the African Student Union. I went on to study at Columbia Law School, and I also received a Master of Laws in International Criminal Law from the University of Amsterdam Law School as well. And so there, I wrote a master thesis on global reparatory justice for people of African descent, for chattel slavery, and the afterlife of slavery. And so I leveraged that experience to apply to the task force. Anyone in the state of California could apply. It was an official state commission. And again, I leveraged that experience of being a human rights scholar, because when I read the statute that created this task force, AB 3121, it stated that the recommendations had to fully comport with international human rights law standards. And so I was like, okay, well, that's my end. And so, if you see the final report, if you go to oag.ca.gov/report, you'll see our 1,100-page final report, and we have over 100 recommendations. They all fully comport with international human rights law standards. I'll conclude by saying under international law, there are 5 forms of reparations. Most Americans, when they think about reparations, they think about the one form, which is compensation. It's a necessary form, but there are 4 other forms as well: restitution, rehabilitation, satisfaction, and guarantees of non-repetition. So our report covers all of those forms.
That's amazing. Brother Burgess, do you want to weigh in on that piece? I mean, obviously you're descended from Rufus Burgess, so that might be self-explicit, but talk a little bit about how you sort of got involved in this work.
Well, yeah, and very unlike Camila, and I tell a lot of people as today, I was, very uneducated on any form of reparation. I knew that my great-grandfather got brought over as a slave, and, listen, my grandfather was born in the cabin where gold was discovered up in the foothills, because his father was brought here as a slave and stayed there until they were forced off the land. And what I can tell you from a living descendant, there's so much pain and hurt that goes with the wrongs and injustices that were done. My parents didn't talk about it. And so my father did talk about it. My mother actually took a liking to our family history, interviewed my grandfather and the other brothers, and learned so much and wrote things down. And so I really got into this not knowing it was reparations, on this fight for what's now known as a state park, being, it was our family's land and another black families, but it was a black township that nobody knows about. And so at the time I didn't know. And again, I say I didn't know because you hear all too often that our people, my people, they don't talk about the trauma that occurred. 1, for protection, 2, because it's hurtful and painful. And you'll see that even with some of the families that are descendants of the slave owners, the cruel slave owners. or even some of the people that have Nazi descent, they don't use those last names. There's a lot of pain that goes with the wrongs that were done. And so, as Camila said, restitution, which I'm sure we'll get into it. My fight was basically on land, which I've been told that, land, if you think about it, land has always been the case for reparations. It's about, the land. And when you total the math up, when you look at what Black Americans, those that were formerly enslaved and those that were never enslaved but actually still Black, or Native, whatever, and classified, they had 1/3 of the land throughout the United States. And today, we don't have any of that. So that's what kind of got me into this fight. And then just understanding being an entrepreneur in business and seeing how, the supply chain works, and where we don't own manufacturing, we don't have the government, federal, state contracts.
That's right.
But the other races do, and it goes back to when our people came off the slave ships, after emancipation, etc. And so it's time that we wake all of America up and really kind of, let's make right the original sin of what the United States of America did to those that were formerly enslaved, those that were in a caste system because of dark skin, misclassified, whatever you want to call it. But that's my fight, and the passion is there. So I'm gonna stop right there and let you ask questions.
No. This is your interview. Our audience needs to hear from you two on this issue. But Jonathan, just so for folks who are not familiar with your work on the Gold Rush Burgess descendants or on Bruce's Beach, I mean, can you give the short version of that story? That's important for our listeners to understand that particular history in terms of the context of thinking about land and stolen land, really, from our ancestors.
Absolutely. The footnote short version is this. I figured, I met a lot of opposition with state parks and other officials throughout our government, people that control history today. And so I said, if I'm going to make a change for anything, I've got to write a book for children. So it was myself. I got a school teacher out of Oklahoma, Kimberly Jones, and Michelle Knight, a ghostwriter, to write a book, a children's book on Black Americans, my family, because I'm a descendant of the Gold Rush. You can't find anything written about that. And what I did in that book is I put original deeds, and I shared information. Even the white people, the white pioneers that did the right thing, that like gave my great-grandfather original deeds to property, history doesn't talk about them either. And so that book was written. I can happily say that Elk Grove School District, kudos to Elk Grove Schools, right, for putting in as part of the curriculum. So I go around the schools and I talk to children and share, the inclusive history of what we should be doing. So that all came about because of, the fight of, I don't know too many people I can say they're a original descendant, right, of before California was even California. My ancestors were here up in those gold mines. I get chills when I hear the task force talking about California and how it was great and free until they found gold. Because my ancestor was brought over here and forced to work in the gold mines to pay for his freedom twice in the state of California. Found the gold mine in 1878, they wrote about it and took it from him. Wow. And so, yes, as we look at moving forward, when you go to Marshall Gold Discovery State Park and you look at that land, you see all the white families that are pioneers still owning property. But yet the Black families, or even the Chinese families, there were a few Chinese that were there, own nothing. So, we've got to get to the bottom of this, and I think the greater America is in agreement with, let's right some wrongs. But what I would say to this, as we talk about task force, and Camila and I have had conversations about it, Philadelphia, anybody doing a task force should be able to look at the census records and put a dollar amount, whether it be federally, on the land that Black Americans own and that was lost, that is now they're under rivers, they're under lakes, they are under prisons, state parks, federal parks, etc. And there's a debt. We can call it restitution for that, but when the Native Americans were massacred, we were massacred too. When they took the land from the Native Americans still, the 5 civilized tribes are getting money, right? They do. And so the Black Americans that lost all their land, we talk about Tulsa, Oklahoma. Black Wall Street, my mom spoke about that, because that's on her side of the family. Nothing's ever been paid to those descendants still today. So we've got some work to do. And federally, there should be federal, state, local government contracts for sure for the descendant class. I can tell you in California, we make up 6%, less than 1% of any state contracts across this nation are going to Black American descendants. That's a crime. It's a crime. My brother testified that Levi Strauss, look up Levi Strauss, making jeans for the mass incarceration, right? Got a fortune. I actually met the great grandson of Mr. Strauss. Served him in, down in the VIP section because I got an entrepreneur business. I'm serving him. But I'm like, well, my great granddad was here too, and they took a gold mine from him. So yes, no harm to Mr. Strauss's great grandson or whatever else. They've worked hard to maintain what they've had and keep it. But it's time that the federal government and the state government that institute these harms didn't give equal protections to Black Americans pay the debt. And to your last audience, it's not you and I, the citizens, that pay it. When you choose to move to California or you choose to move to the United States, you inherit the debt of what the institution did. Our governor said that the institution is responsible, years ago after drug law, institution is responsible for what's going on in the Black community today. And what I would say to that is that institutions don't work without people. But yes, the institutions were responsible, and so therefore the institutions should pay the debt. And it's not coming out of your pocket or my pocket. So if I choose to move to Germany, guess what? Whatever debt they have from what they did, I got to pay it when I pay my taxes. Don't get a say.
That is exactly right. Thank you so much. Listen, we got to take a quick break. You're listening to Evening Words. I'm your host, Dr. James Peterson. We are live on WRD, 900 AM, 96.1 FM, exploring what is owed through our reparations roundtable. We're really excited to have Ms. Camilla Moore, who's the chair of the California Reparations Task Force, an attorney and reparative justice scholar, and Jonathan Burgess, the author of Gold Rush Burgess Descendants and descendant of enslaved gold rush pioneer Rufus Burgess. We'll be back after these messages.
It's the WURD Hot 60.
Hot 60.
Here's the hottest 60 seconds you missed from Wake Up with Word.
4 Philly cops who were fired for misconduct got their jobs back, and we should be outraged. Not just because of what they did, but because of what they represent. They're part of a system that holds you accountable, but always has excuses for itself. Sergeant Joseph Zapurka, a 30-year veteran who was fired after the Plainview Project, revealed that he was one of dozens of officers who had made racist or otherwise bigoted posts on social media. Records show he made nearly 100 offensive posts, including an image of a skeleton wrapped in a U.S. flag carrying a gun with the words "Death to Islam" across the top. I personally led protests to get guys like him fired, and we successfully got more than a dozen of them off the force. We met with the mayor, city council, and police commissioners to make sure it happened. To have him back is a slap in the face. We must not allow it to stand.
And that's the hottest 60 seconds you missed this week on Wake Up with Word on WURD, Progressive Black Talk Media.
How much for the bouquet of flowers?
They are $6.99. Great choice.
Thanks.
For someone special?
Something like that.
Well, if you really want to make a good impression, why not throw in some lottery tickets? Add some scratch-offs to the bouquet.
Okay.
Sure. You give your loved one a chance to win money. If they win, they might even share it with you.
Never even thought of that. You know what? Let me get a few of those scratch-offs for the bouquet.
Smart man. Happy Valentine's Day to you. Keep on scratching.
Players must be 18 or older. Please play responsibly. Problem gambling? Helpline 1-800-GAMBLER.
Having low income can mean making tough choices. Choosing between paying for food or medication or a place to live is a reality for many people. Do you know someone who could use some extra help? Find out about the Supplemental Security Income Program, SSI, administered by Social Security. You could receive monthly SSI payments if your income and financial resources are low and you are 65 or older, or an adult or child with a disability or who is blind. SSI is money you can use to help pay for basic needs, like putting food on the table, keeping the lights on, paying the rent. It can mean new shoes for growing feet or help with medical needs. Call 1-800-772-1213 or visit ssa.gov/SSI to schedule an appointment or start to apply today. That's ssa.gov/SSI. This message produced by Social Security at U.S. taxpayer expense.
In honor of Black History Month, WURD, in collaboration with First World Theater, presents Diamonds of the Diaspora, Black political figures and influencers in their own words. Stephen Biko was a South African university student activist fighting for freedom from apartheid. In 1968, he co-founded the South African Students Organization and initiated the Black Consciousness Movement, whose philosophy is rooted in affirming Black identity and removing the ideas of inferiority that apartheid promoted. In 1971, Stephen Biko spoke at a nationwide multiracial student conference on the connection between white racism and Black consciousness.
We now come to the group that has longest enjoyed confidence from the Black world, the white liberal establishment, including radical and leftist groups. The biggest mistake the Black world ever made was to assume that whoever opposes apartheid was an ally. How many white people fighting for their version of change in South Africa are really motivated by genuine concern and not by guilt? A white person possesses the natural passport to the exclusive pool of white privileges. Yet, at the back of his mind is a constant reminder that he is quite comfortable as things stand and therefore should not bother about change. I'm not sneering at the liberals and their involvement. Neither am I suggesting that they are the most to blame for the Black man's plight. Rather, I am illustrating the fundamental fact that the total identification by white liberals with an oppressed group of Blacks in a system that forces one group to enjoy privilege and live on the sweat of another is impossible.
That's a speech from Stephen Biko, performed by Richard Bradford from First World Theater. This Black History Month, we honor the work and political influence of Stephen Biko. This Black History Month vignette is brought to you by the Tucker Law Group, the Pennsylvania Lottery, Philadelphia Water Department, and Independence Blue Cross. Celebrating Black excellence worldwide and bringing joy and power to the people. This is WURD 900 AM and 96.1 FM, Philadelphia.
Streaming online on wordradio.com and the Word Radio app.
And now back to Evening Words with Dr. James Peterson on WURD, Progressive Black Talk Media.
Welcome back to What is Owed, a Reparations Roundtable here on Evening Words. I'm your host, Dr. James Peterson. We are live on WRD, 900 AM, 96.1 FM, in deep conversation with Ms. Camilla Moore, who's the chair of the California Reparations Task Force, attorney and reparative justice scholar, and Mr. Jonathan Burgess, who's author of Gold Rush Burgess, Descendants and descendant of enslaved Gold Rush pioneer Rufus Burgess. Mr. Burgess, Ms. Moore, welcome back to Evening Words. I think I would like to take a few minutes, and maybe this goes to you, Ms. Moore, to talk a little bit about the bills that resulted from the task force work, and what those bills are seeking to address from your perspective. I do also would love for you to reiterate those the 5 pillars of international law that apply to the kind of reparative work that we're discussing here.
Yes, absolutely. To reiterate, the 5 forms of reparations under international human rights law standards are 1, compensation, so, cash, payments, 2, restitution, so to Jonathan's point, restitution could account for stolen land, stolen intellectual property as well, when we think about the cultural contributions of African Americans to this country, or even, the missing patents of African Americans that they weren't able to receive just due for their inventions, either during slavery or after slavery, for several different circumstances related to institutional discrimination. The 3rd form of reparations under international law is satisfaction. So that's more symbolic in nature, and I have kind of a novel argument where I say we're already in a process of reparations. We've just seen just a few of the forms, like satisfaction. So think about like a formal apology on behalf of the state or the government for its role in slavery and Jim Crow. Or, for instance, what we've already seen, particularly post-2020, when we see the renaming of streets, the taking down of Confederate monuments. Like, those are examples of reparations under the form of satisfaction. You also have guarantees of non-repetition is another form of reparations under international law. And that gets at more structural and institutional policy change. And then the last form of reparations under international law is rehabilitation, right? So that could look like, free education from cradle to grave, free health care from cradle to grave, or culturally, free culturally relevant mental health services, things that take into account, the harms African Americans have endured, and on a mental, physical level as well. So pivoting to, the results of the California Reparations Task Force work. So as I said, the task force concluded our work June 29th, 2023. We produced a 1,100-page final report with over 100 policy proposals, over 100 recommendations to the California State Legislature, because that was our official role, was an advisory body to the state legislature on the types of reparations proposals that they should turn into legislation, and that Governor Gavin Newsom or the future governor should turn into law. And so the California Legislative Black Caucus has taken the initiative within the wider California legislature to introduce 14 bills that they are calling their reparations priority bill package. In this first iteration of 14 bills, they have said they are focusing on areas surrounding education, civil rights, and criminal justice reform. We also have State Senator Stephen Bradford, who is the vice chair of the CLBC, but he has also served on the task force with me, and he's also introduced his own set of bills as well in 2023 and a day after the CLBC, and I will describe those bills. So SB 490 is one of the bills that Senator Bradford introduced this past August, right after the heels of the end of the task force, that would create a new state agency for descendants of slaves, tentatively called the California American Freedmen Affairs Agency. It pays homage to the Freedmen's Bureau that once existed on the national level in this country, that was unjustly dismantled in 1877 after the end of Reconstruction in this country.
That's right.
And so that agency on a state level would provide direct services from education grants, business grants, several different types of direct services to descendants of slaves, while also providing oversight, right, being a watchdog to existing agencies and other institutions, right, to eradicate any lingering badges and incidents of slavery that may persist in society in different industries within the state of California. The other bills to conclude that Senator Bradford has introduced. One is SB 1007 that would provide property tax relief to descendants of slaves in formerly redlined communities. You also have SB 1013 that would provide housing grants to descendants of slaves so that they can, one, either purchase their first home, or two, provide grants to descendants of slaves who already have homes for, mortgage assistance, and then also would provide homeowners insurance as well. There's another bill that, just to conclude one more.
No, please, the more the merrier. The more the merrier, Ms. Moore. The more the merrier. Please keep going.
The bill number is escaping me. I'm sorry, but it would it would provide an opportunity for descendants of slaves to either receive compensation or receive their land back in instances where the land was taken via racially motivated eminent domain practiced by the state of California. We have many stories. One of the more prominent stories is Bruce's Beach, right? We talked about the Bruce family in Manhattan Beach that had their land taken away, their beach resort taken away via eminent domain. And you have the descendants of the Bruces. One, they were able to get their land transferred back to them, in 2022. But because it was zoned now for residential use, they weren't able to use it commercially, so they decided to sell the property. So they received millions of dollars for that land. And so essentially that bill by Senator Bradford would allow that process, either get the land back or a compensation alternative for other families who are similarly situated.
I have a follow-up question, but I'm going to kick it over to Jonathan really quickly. Jonathan, how does that make you feel to hear some of the policy that's going to be in place around land ownership and support for home ownership, even though that doesn't necessarily restore what was lost to you and your family during the gold rush?
Yeah, well, I mean, to be specific, there's one bill that does affect my family and the gold rush, and so while I'm grateful and happy for that, as well as, you know, a host of what Camila read off, or bills that represent, you know, pretty much the descendant class. When you look at, you know, grants or property tax relief, I think those are great starts. But I will say that, you know, there were a host of other bills introduced in that package that help everybody. And so, you know, that's been the history of Black America. You know, what's good for Blacks, good for everybody benefits. Initially, you know, minority or whatever had to do with Black people, and then it's everybody's included. And so when you look at the masses of people, and I understand that these bills, you know, there's a multi-year process that the caucus wants to introduce these bills. Repair is not going to happen overnight, but the most meaningful bills, you know, to restore people, hey, you know, we're missing one big piece. Whether it be some sort of cash, whether it be free education or reimbursing people that already had to pay for education that should never had to pay for it before. You know, when I look and see that, you know, Native Americans or some of these, you know, immigrants that come over here that are undocumented have all these resources. And yet those of us that descend from a group that have been racially terrorized since we've been here still deal with whatever you want to call it, you know, this ignorant people, or people that are racist, or institutional policies that have kept us at the bottom. So it is a letdown. It's a disappointment. You know, while I can be happy that, yes, there's a path for me to potentially get the land back, I would hope that in this path of me getting our land back, just like I sent the task force, that Ronald Reagan, Republican President Ronald Reagan, resurveyed in 1988 a section of township that belonged to Black families. He was the former governor of California. I sent the task force all the information they need on how land was resurveyed, and I don't think it just stopped in California. I think it ran across the nation. So until we bring some rights there and then pay our people for those losses, many of them won't have the documentation that the Burgess family has to prove their case. But it can be proven just based on the amount of land loss that's there. So while I'm happy that there's some bills that are instituted, I'm very disappointed that the masses of people, of our people that are still hurting, how often do you see a GoFundMe account for a Black person that died? Why couldn't we have gotten an insurance policy for grandma who's actually had more racism than me?
Right.
So there are a number of things, and I put these things out not because, you know, it's like if somebody else is making a task force or thinking about some things that you can do that help immediately, you know, when we can say, hey, we're going to give every school kid a scholarship. Not just Black kids, but every kid in California. Okay, great. Well, how about the 6% or less than that descendant class in California? You give them a life insurance policy, okay? So that the children aren't scraping, because we know that mass incarceration, over-policing, all kind of things like that have happened. So yes, I'm happy in one sense, but you hear my passion, and I'm not mad at Camila. I'm not mad at anybody at the task force, because I know. Look, there are a lot of people that are not happy, but these are just things, and I know there's a limited amount of time, but you've got listeners that are talking about raising task forces around the country.
Right.
I'll say this, is that when our folks were fighting for civil rights, just equal opportunities, these huge corporations were formed, and they control everything. And we are still at the bottom. You still hear the first Black this, the first Black that.
That's right.
So, yeah, we got to come with some meaningful results. And listen, our ancestors never asked for anything for free. They wanted opportunity. The debt that they worked for and that we all enjoy has never been paid. And so that's what I'm saying to the world. There's a debt still owed. And when you look at the institutions or the politicians that were involved and actually putting the nail in our coffins. I told you about a resurvey of a township. The state's not going to come out and tell you that this happened. I didn't have anybody come and tell me, hey, God, look, they resurveyed the whole town.
Right.
So people got to do their own research. And unfortunately, see, with the Native Americans, you know, as the bloodline got thinned out, you got people with blue eyes and blonde hair that are getting Native benefits, right? Well, when you talk about the Black American, the descendant of whatever, that don't work. Right?
So
it doesn't work.
And so, Jonathan, that brings me to the follow-up question I wanted to ask Ms. Moore. Ms. Moore, you know, if I had a nickel for everybody who's talked about the concept of the American freedman, especially coming out of the affirmative action decision where Clarence Thomas mentioned it, especially as people were thinking about how do you prove descendancy in the context of reparations, you know, if I had a nickel for every time somebody brought it up, I would already have my own reparations. Like, there are a lot of folks in our listening audience who are thinking about the American freedman as a concept in a way that they hope is about tracing descendancy from those who were enslaved Africans in this country, and it not becoming something where that Jonathan's talking about, where anyone can say, oh, I have this descendant, or, you know, some folks are frustrated with where affirmative action landed, with where efforts around DEI landed in terms of how inclusive they are across different cultures and across different identity categories. And some of those folks are centering in on seizing on the concept of the American freedman as one way to distinguish those descended from slaves from everybody else. Help me to better understand that term and your sense of it in the legal context.
I would point folks to an article that just came out inside Higher Education in November of this past year called Affirmative Action is Dead, so how about reparations? And it talks about the legal landscape of a post-affirmative action in higher education, particularly in selective colleges and universities like the Ivy League and other, you know, elite colleges, and what they're doing for Black students, particularly for African Americans who are descendants of slaves, in this you know, no affirmative action under a diversity rationale world that we're in. And so you have universities like the University of Virginia, you know, now putting on their admissions applications. Again, this is after the Supreme Court ruled that race-based affirmative action under a diversity rationale is unconstitutional. You now have it being perfectly legally viable, right? Unless there's another challenge by the conservatives. But presently, it's perfectly legally viable, right?
Oh, Ms. Moore, I think we lost you right in the middle of a very important answer to a very important question. Jonathan, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Awesome.
Hopefully she's able to get back in.
We'll give a minute for Ms. Moore to get back on. She was right on the cusp of answering a really powerful question. Jonathan, I don't know if the whole concept of the American freedman has entered into your discourse, but when you're talking about what happens sometimes with American Indian identity, with Native American or Indigenous American identity, you know, one of the challenges around that is folks who are claiming it without necessarily having to prove it. Nick, I think we lost Ms. Moore, so if you can check and see when she's trying to get back in, that'd be great. I'm curious as to how that has kind of impacted on made an impact on your work and your experience with this issue.
Well, I mean, it is. And so I haven't been super involved. I'm familiar with American freedmen. I'm familiar with freedmen, you know, whether it's used from the Native American. Listen, on my mother's side, Choctaw, and we got that lineage, which we don't get benefits there either because of nefarious acts of institutions. So I know what freedmen refer to, and then the emancipated slaves. So there are two groups, you know, that were technically. But I say this, right? Even the Native Americans, and my mother's side of the family, some of them that were Native were classified as colored, and then Negro. Right, and so listen, when you and so when at a federal level, when you remove the word Negro, right, you did something to us, because we had the Negro Baseball League. There were, Martin Luther King used the word Negro over 50 times, I think, in one of his speeches. But yet we eliminate that word. Why? Well, because some people abused it and they're uncomfortable about it. right? And so those are that when you talk about the atrocities and things that were done, I think Camilla back. I don't want to go off on a left turn here,
so
but
we do have Ms. Moore back. We have to take a quick break, though, folks, to come back for our final little piece here. You're listening to Evening Words. I'm your host, Dr. James Peterson. We are live on WRD, 900 AM, 96.1 FM, deep into our conversation on what is owed, the Reparations Roundtable here on Evening Words, with Ms. Camilla Moore, who is the chair of the California Reparations Task Force, attorney and reparative justice scholar, and Mr. Jonathan Burgess, who is author of Gold Rush Burgess Descendants and descendant of enslaved Gold Rush pioneer Rufus Burgess. We'll be back after these messages.
Time for a traffic update on Word Radio.
Watch for an accident on the 30 bypass. It's on the westbound side. Right at 322, it's off to the shoulder, but traffic is heavy going back to about Route 100. Also impacting traffic on Route 100 northbound, where we're jammed from Whiteland Woods Road to the 30 bypass. 76 is heavy westbound, University Avenue to Girard Avenue. Heavy delays 95 northbound, Girard Avenue out to Bridge Street. Crash on 95 in Wilmington, Delaware, southbound between 295 and Highway 141 in the left lane. Line Expressway jams westbound 8th to the Schuylkill Expressway, and a crash in Lower Merion, Ardmore Avenue at School Lane. Report brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Progressive Insurance is making it easy to save money. When you bundle your auto policy with home, condo, or renters, you'll earn a multi-policy discount. Easy to bundle, easy to save. Visit Progressive.com. That's Progressive.com. And for more traffic information, log on to SigAlert.com. I'm Jason Lee with your Philadelphia area traffic.
It's time for an NBC 10 First Alert weather update.
Above normal temperatures for the next few days. It'll feel like spring, including today with sunshine, a few clouds, 58 the high this afternoon. Even warmer for Tuesday and Wednesday. Tomorrow, sunshine in the morning, but clouds come in the afternoon with showers likely, a high of 64. The shower chances go up Tuesday evening. By Wednesday, we've got scattered showers in the morning, mild in the afternoon, back up to 65. It'll be a breezy day with rain turning steadier later Wednesday into Wednesday night. I'm NBC 10 First Alert meteorologist Bill Henley.
The job search can be a difficult and frustrating process. WURDs Livelihood Initiative was designed to help you find the right opportunity for your next professional move. Check out these recent job openings posted on the Livelihood job board at wordworks.com. The Public Health Management Corporation is hiring for several exciting roles, including youth case managers, a behavioral health coordinator, and a part-time youth ally. For more information on these jobs and others, go to wordworks.com and learn more about the Livelihood Initiative. Brought to you by Word Radio. Progressive. Black Talk Media.
Black history is American history. Our sacrifices and achievements make this country stronger. So we celebrate Kamala Harris, the first Black woman vice president in history, General Lloyd Austin, the first Black Secretary of Defense, and Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, the first Black woman on the Supreme Court. History makers who reflect President Biden's commitment to Black America, delivering real results for us. The lowest Black unemployment rate in history, Black child poverty cut in half, record numbers of new Black entrepreneurs, and over $130 billion in student debt forgiven. But there's more to do, including protecting the right to vote and advancing opportunities for all of us to keep making history.
I'm Joe Biden, candidate for president, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Biden for President.
Tune in to Eagle Word Magazine, hosted by POC, the first Friday at 10 a.m. for the PA Lottery Eagle Word Fact of the Month. Brought to you by PA Lottery, benefiting older Pennsylvanians every day.
And now, back to Evening Words with Dr. James Peterson on WURD, Progressive Black Talk Media.
Welcome back to What is Owed, a reparations roundtable here on Evening Words. I'm your host, Dr. James Peterson. We are deep in conversation with Ms. Camilla Moore, who's the chair of the California Reparations Task Force, an attorney and reparative justice scholar, and Mr. Jonathan Burgess, author of Gold Rush Burgess Descendants and a descendant himself of enslaved Gold Rush pioneer Rufus Burgess. Mr. Burgess, Ms. Moore, welcome back to the program. Ms. Moore, So you were right in the middle of saying something really, really important. I had asked you about the whole American freedman concept, and you were talking about the fact that at UVA, at least, if you could trace your descendancy to an American freed person, then you might still be able to get affirmative action. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but finish your thought about thinking about the legal concept of American freedmen in a post-affirmative action world.
Yes. So it's nuanced, but again, I'll just say, just to be clear on what was actually decided on June 29th in the Supreme Court, the justices essentially stated that colleges can no longer, consider race when for admissions under a diversity rationale. So what that means is no longer can race be considered to be a factor in the idea of, again, diversity around how can you make a student body more diverse. Race can no longer be, a consideration. However, that still leaves open the door. These legal experts said, again, in an article that was just released in Inside Higher Education, November 2023, titled "Affirmative Action is Dead, so how about reparations?" Essentially, the legal landscape, until there is a challenge, potentially by, probably the same conservative think tanks who challenged, race-based criteria under a diversity rationale this past summer, but still, right, there still is legal viability, again, for admissions criteria that is narrowly tailored, and again, that's legal language as well, that's narrowly tailored to descendants of slaves. So again, that's why you see institutions like the University of Virginia right now, if you apply right over the past fall, you'll see something on their application that says, like, are you, a descendant of a person who was forced to labor at the University of Virginia? That's why you have Georgetown, they're allowed to provide tuition benefits, particularly to, descendants of slaves that can trace their genealogy, to someone, those 272 slaves who were sold to essentially build up Georgetown's institution. And so you have, just to conclude, Professor Kevin Brown, who was cited in that article, someone that I personally invited to provide expert testimony to the California Reparations Task Force when we were deciding on, who should be eligible for the recommendations, right? Should it be based on race? Should it be based on lineage, right? You have Professor Kevin Brown, again, cited in that article, essentially saying that there is legal viability, again, for education benefits, but extrapolate that, wider for descendants of slaves. But in the education context, they're saying the closer that you can tie the benefit to the institution's personal or institutional history against that group of people, the better. So that's why you're seeing UVA, Georgetown, providing benefits to people who can provide a direct connection, right, to them being a descendant of someone who labored on that institution. But there's a lot of opportunity, essentially, is what I'm getting at in this realm.
That sounds. Thank you for breaking that down for our listeners and for me too, Ms. Moore. I appreciate that. It sounds like a few more hoops you have to jump through, especially if you have to tie it to the local region of the institution and that own institution's connection to chattel slavery. But there is a window still open for those who are descended from slaves, which is the original intent of affirmative action in some ways. No matter how it played out, that was the original intent, to still access some of those benefits if they can prove. Right, that they are descended from enslaved folks.
Dr. Peterson, and I just want to add this, and I get that. I've done the genealogy, the JED kit. I actually am a descendant of the folks that were in Georgetown. But for someone like myself, that's already got college educated, right? Maybe my daughters or children down the line. And so while I think these things are good and they're helpful, and they're forms of saying, hey, here's how we repair. I think the meat of it is, how do we repair our people right now with something tangible, whether it be exempt tax status, something now that we can do. And again, I bring these messages up not just for, you guys, but for every listener or somebody that may be looking to form a task force. Let's look at something. We know, and Camila mentioned it not long ago, the majority of Californians are against any type of cash payment. They are, unfortunately, and I think that's basically on education, because if they were informed and educated properly on why there's cash being, given, then I think we might see a change. But those are just some of the challenges that I see, but yes. And so I mentioned that me being a part of that Georgetown project, because that's one of the scars of slavery. My ancestor wrote about how he was moved from plantation to plantation, and basically, as the oral narrative will go, he was a breeder. And people don't want to talk about that but when I go into the children's schools and I talk about the books, I tell them that I'm related to the Gregory family out of Virginia, because that was my ancestor's first slave owner, and every other white, group of people that were there. Those were the things that happened that we don't want to talk about, and we got to be willing to have those conversations and move this cart forward. It's an uphill battle, but I think in California we made some headway. I mean, I take my hat off to Miss Camille Marcus. She did a phenomenal job on the task force, and I'm grateful that she kept it to lineage, because it should be lineage specific and not just everybody. And I think people are more open to that, knowing that there's a group of people here that are specific to some harms that were done, that were since America was made, and the institutions, which our governor said are responsible, have done their job in maintaining this, as some would say, foot on necks. It's happened, and it continues to happen. So,
Camilla, for folks who have not, been able to do what Jonathan has been able to do in terms of his own heritage and his own sort of genealogical connectivity throughout his family, how do you make yourself part of the in-group for the reparations policies that are on tap for the state of California? How do you prove it? What are the means by which you can make the claim and say, hey, I'm descended from enslaved folks?
Yes, so the California Reparations Task Force, we recommended officially that, for the broad sweep of the, more substantive recommendations, the eligibility criteria should be as follows. If you're a descendant of a free or an enslaved Black person living in the United States prior to 1900, that was actually an eligibility criteria that was introduced as a motion by one of the task force members, who's actually Jamaican American, the only Caribbean person on our task force, Dr. Jovan Scott Lewis, who's the director of geography studies at UC Berkeley. He introduced that historic motion to make, our recommendations, particularly for cash, lineage based, with the acute understanding that he, as a Jamaican person, would not benefit.
Wow.
But, understanding, in his words, the true sense, origin of Pan-Africanism, going back to that 1900 Pan-African Conference, right? Pan-Africanism was about, African people helping each other in, specific political fights. And, when we're talking about reparations, particularly in its origin for chattel slavery and those lingering badges and incidents of slavery that, yes, affect broader society, and even you can say, yes, obviously, broadly Black people in general. But, reparations still is a sacred political fight that began with descendants of slaves like Isaiah Dickerson, like Callie House, and was carried on, by their direct descendants like Queen Mother Ali Moore, right? And so, that is the criteria. Now, also, right, this burden of proof, so to speak, should not rest on us as descendants, knowing, again, that burden of proof should not rest on us. And so that's something that we talked about in the task force at length. And so, for instance, Senate Bill 490, which is the bill that I mentioned earlier that's been introduced by Bradford, that would create this new state agency that would have a plethora of different direct service branches. One of those branches would be a genealogy branch. That would be tasked with expert genealogists that would, provide genealogical services to descendants free of cost to help with that eligibility. Because, federally recognized tribes, they also have a similar system as well. That's something that people don't really know.
That's right.
But they have actually added criteria because they go by something called blood quantum, which is another conversation for another day. but they, at the root, they still have a genealogical, criteria for admission. And so, I'll just, conclude by saying that. But I'll also say there are free resources that people can go to right now to do on their own, if they would like to start. Ironically enough, the Mormon Church, who has its own history with anti-Blackness, has lots of records. And, you can go there for free, I think any day of the week except Sunday. And you can set up an appointment, and they will assist you with tracing your genealogy.
Wow.
And in fact, there's community organizations I'll highlight, like CJEC, NAASD, who have post the task force, and during the task force has held genealogy workshops. And so, there's a lot of space and opportunity for descendants of slaves to, learn about their history, and that's really the power of the lineage vote. And the lineage vote is that, reparations, it's healing work, right? You're able to reconnect. It's kind of like, the idea of Sankofa, right? It's not enough where you just get reparations. Like, you need to be able to understand who your people were, where you came from. Like, that's part of the reparations process.
So we only have a couple minutes left, and I have at least 5,000 more questions for both of you. But I just want to just say that I hope you both will come back on, because we're going to be doing a regular segment called the Reparations Report here on Evening Words, and we'll need experts like yourself to come in some rotation based upon your schedule every once in a while to share some of your insights and some of your experiences. And so for the folks out there in the listening audience who are skeptical of all this reparations talk, who are thinking right now like, oh, it sounds good, Dr. Peters is having a great time interviewing these really smart people about reparations, but it's never going to happen. What do we say to those folks about how we make it happen, how we stay conscripted to the issue in ways that move along? Obviously, here in Philadelphia, we have this new task force that's coming online. Hopefully, everyone who's been listening to this program is better educated about how we can support that effort. But there's still going to be some folks in our community who are just they're going to throw their hands up, say it's never going to happen. What do we say to those folks to inspire them to stay the course for us to do this important work?
Well, can I just say, Don, I'll just conclude by saying, they said the same about slavery, and they said the same about us achieving civil rights, right? We freed ourselves. I'm talking about African Americans. We freed ourselves from slavery. We made the institution of slavery so untenable through either widespread slave revolts or just, ordinary rebellion on the plantations, or fleeing to the North Star, right? Or Abraham Lincoln having to enlist over 100,000 black troops. If that didn't happen, we wouldn't have won. The Union wouldn't have won the Civil War, right? We fought through Jim Crow apartheid and secured civil rights, right? And so the same is going to have to happen for reparations. And so I hope that inspires folks to stay the course and stay engaged in this historical movement, in this third Reconstruction that we're currently in.
Mr. Burgess, you want to weigh in on that piece? How do we keep people inspired about this work?
Yeah, well, I mean, kind of like, to what Camilla said, if our ancestors believed slavery wouldn't end, it would never end it. Right. And what I would say is to people that say it's never going to happen, well, it's happening. California being the first, I can't say we got it 100% right, but there's a lot of work that's been put into it. And the blueprint, to some degree, when you look at the research, is there by historic. You can't knock what's been written in that book. It's done by scholars and historians, and so it's factual. In fact, I don't know that much was even done when they decided to pay reparation to the Jewish Holocaust survivors.
Wow.
I don't know that there was a task force with all this research of what was done. So it's happening. It's happening not only in California but across the nation. People are upriding reparation task force, and I'd say this is that as we enter this political year of this new presidency or whatever it is, on your local, state, and every level, we should be looking at voting our interest. Okay, and that's what we should be looking at, voting our interest, and so. Some form of repair needs to begin to happen at every level, because we scratched the surface in some of the wrongs. And I just shared my family story, a brief portion of it. There's so much more, and there are a lot of families. I'm just one that can prove it with documents that go back to 1870s, right? Original documents of the state, and presidents signing off on nonsense. So those type of truths being revealed, it's time that we as Californians, but as we as Americans begin, and those of us that are saying naysayers, well, there are other people outside the race that are saying, yeah, reparations should happen. These are people that are not Black American that believe we should have reparations. So for those naysayers of our group that are saying it's not going to happen, I'll just say stay small. There were some slaves that stayed on the plantation too.
Wow. Mr. Jonathan Burgess, Ms. Camilla Moore, thank you so much for joining us here on What is Owed, the Reparations Roundtable on Evening Words. I hope you both will consider coming back to the program to continue to share your wealth of knowledge on this topic for our audience at a moment where the city of Philadelphia, we're trying to embark upon that journey that you all have already achieved in some ways. Thank you so much for joining us here. Thank you both. You're listening to Evening Words. I'm your host, Dr. James Peterson. We're live here on WRD 900 AM, 96.1 FM. We just wrapped up a conversation with Mr. Jonathan Burgess, author of Gold Rush Burgess Descendants and descendant of enslaved Gold Rush pioneer Rufus Burgess, and all the way from Leimert Park, Ms. Camilla Moore, chair of the California Reparations Task Force, attorney, and reparative justice scholar. We have a couple more great guests coming up for you all, and we'll introduce them to you when we come back from these messages.
Word Radio Digital Tip of the Month with Stephanie Humphrey is brought to you by Comcast.
A lot of us are using fitness trackers to help us stay in shape, get better sleep, drink more water, and live a healthier lifestyle. But do you know how vulnerable your personal health information might be? Take a look at the privacy policy for your device to understand what data the company is collecting and what they're allowed to do with that data. Head to the device settings to turn off or restrict any data collection that you don't feel is necessary. Limit location tracking so that others won't be able to pinpoint exactly where you are at any given time. And of course, make sure you have a strong password and two-factor authentication set up as well. It's cool to use the latest technology to get fit, just make sure you're staying protected too. Stay tuned to WURD for more tips and stay connected with us at wordradio.com.
These days, my happy place feels a little happier, even if the fish aren't biting.
Mental health care is working for Diego. See what it can do for you at mentalhealthcareworks.org. A message from the American Psychiatric Association Foundation.
Where's the professor? Microphone check, 1, 2, here we go.
And now back to Evening Words with Dr. James Peterson on WURD, Progressive Black Talk Media.
Welcome back to What is Owed, a special reparations roundtable on Evening Words. I'm your host, Dr. James Peterson. We are live on WRD 900 AM, 96.1 FM. I'm really excited to welcome to the program Miss Michelle Miller, who's the former town councilor of Amherst, Massachusetts, and chair of the Town of Amherst African Heritage Reparation Assembly. And my main man, Dr. Amakal Shabazz, professor and undergraduate program director in the W.B. Du Bois Department of Afro-American Studies at the University of Massachusetts. For those who don't know, that is one of the premier Afro-American Studies departments in the world, and certainly in this nation. Dr. Shabazz, Ms. Miller, welcome to Evening Words.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for joining. I want to give you a quick recap of where we are, because this is our third hour of the program. We're moving into our third hour of the program. Excited to have you. Where we started at the top of the show, honestly, well, we're in D.C. and in Philly today, so we had an interview with VP Harris at the very beginning of the show, and then we moved into a conversation with the council members who are spearheading the local task force on reparations here in the city of Philadelphia. Then we went all the way out west and talked to Miss Camilla Moore and Mr. Jonathan Burgess. You all are familiar with Miss Camilla Moore. She's the chair of the task force in California. It's done yeoman's work there. And Mr. Burgess, who's descended from Black Gold Rush families, is also involved in that same work there. So we started here in Philly. We went West Coast. Now we're back East Coast, but going way up north to talk about the great work that you all are doing in Massachusetts. So thank you so much for joining us here on Evening Words.
Thank you for having us. This is an honor to be here.
It's the honor's all mine. It's great to talk to you both. I wonder if and I'm not sure if this is for you, Michelle, or for you, Dr. Shabazz, if you could start by telling us where and how the process started for Amherst in terms of this conversation and all the work that you all have been engaged in around reparations.
Absolutely. Dr. Shabazz, would you like me to start us off? So thank you for that question, and this is especially exciting for me. I'm from the Philadelphia area, so when I received this invitation, it was really great. So
Awesome.
thank you again for having us. So this work began formally after the murder of Mr. George Floyd. There were folks like Dr. Shabazz and others who were talking about reparative justice in our community and in Northampton, which is a close by community to ours. And it was a group of us that got together, grassroots, and we created a petition that essentially asked our town council to formally apologize for anti-Black structural racism, as well as to create a dedicated reparations fund. And that petition really took off. At the time, as you know, many of us were activated and ready to really try to make some deep and lasting change in our communities. And so the petition really took off, and we followed that with doing some of the research work that we felt our community, as some of the earlier panelists talked about tonight, our community needed to understand its history, and so that's sort of where we began the work. And then eventually we did get the town council to agree to form this commission that Dr. Shabazz and I were both on, and also to create the dedicated reparations fund.
Thank you for that, Ms. Miller. Dr. Shabazz, you want to weigh in on that?
So I just would add that the outpouring from Amherst is a majority population is not people of African descent.
Correct.
We are a very tiny percentage of it. We are a college town, and even within the three collegiate institutions that exist here, we're just talking very small numbers with respect to the African American student bodies in those different campuses. So it really meant that the white community really taking a deep look at what reparations is, what is owed, and coming to some determination that finally that needed to be addressed.
Can you both talk a little bit about the kind of research or the way you made the case to the majority population that this was important to realize some kind of remedy in the reparations space?
Yeah, absolutely. We did it in two parts, and of course our research is still ongoing. There's research that came before ours, there's research that's yet to come. But we started with a historical timeline, so went back to the inception of our town and began to look at the structural racism that we were able to find. Now, of course, we called it a partial historical timeline because there is plenty that I'm sure we haven't been able to uncover, and we'll, as I said, continue to do that work. The second part of our research was to determine what the current day disparities were. So we looked at disparities in various, in housing, in income, in education, in healthcare, transportation, policing, and then we produced a report on those disparities. And it was those two reports together that I think really influenced our town leaders and officials and community members to see that although we're in, a progressive New England town, and many of us, we have our Black Lives Matter signs, and we stand for something, but yet there is all of this history, and there are all of these disparities here, right here in Amherst, and so that I think that really is what took us to the place that we needed to get the commission formed.
Dr. Shabazz, do you want to weigh in on that? Dr. Shabazz, do you want to weigh in on that?
James,
yes.
Massachusetts and Pennsylvania very much parallel each other in some respects in terms of the relationship of slavery to the Commonwealths, to the state. In 1780, there were about 7,000 enslaved Africans in the state of Pennsylvania, with some 539 in Philadelphia County. Likewise, in 1760, when Amherst broke off from Hadley to become its own municipality, we know there was slavery here. It was almost in that same year that Amherst came into being that an enslaved person by the name of Pump his owner took out an ad in the Boston Post Boy, a Boston newspaper, asking for people to turn him in, to not let him be free, but if they knew his whereabouts and he gave a description, then to alert the authorities and turn him in. So that's the same year Amherst was created. But both states tended to move away from slavery by the end of the 1700s as we go into the 1800s, although aspects of the support for slavery and enslavement will continue on down into the 1840s. So in both Pennsylvania and Massachusetts, you have to look at how the institutions in the town, in Philadelphia, in Amherst, were also connected. We're finding connections between Amherst College and plantations down south, enslaved people down south, where some of the wealth of people who are on the board of trustees who helped to finance and create our little Amherst College were, in fact, their wealth was connected to stolen labor, to the enslavement of African people. So this is all of what comes up in the research. You begin to see the connections, the traces of the trade, so to speak, of the slave trade and of human enslavement.
Based on, and this is for both of you, I think, based on your understanding of these movements that we've been discussing for reparations, what are some of the differences or distinctions that you're seeing between pursuing reparations at the municipal level versus the state and or federal levels? And I guess that question is multi-pronged in the sense that I mean differences in terms of like how you approach strategy, but also differences in terms of research. Like Dr. Shabazz, you're just mentioning that as you're doing the research, you're identifying ties, traces of the trade that take you out of the state into the Deep South. And so what are the differences between those different pursuits, and how do you make that work at those multiple levels, municipal, state, and or federal?
Michelle, you want to? Well, I think we should both talk to it, though. As Michelle and I both recognized early on and spoke to it from our town committee, is that we see our local work as dovetailing, helping to build momentum for the state and especially for the federal level. We know we can't wait on when things change in Congress or when the executive branch will go ahead and create a commission and take things to the next stage. We have to build towards that. And that's what we're doing at the local levels. Also, one of the things, and Michelle can speak well to this too, is the relationship of our being able to do any kind of direct monetary compensation is tied to actions at the state level. And I'll just leave it like that.
Ms. Miller, you want to add to that a little bit?
Sure, yeah. I would say what in our community, going through the consultative process with both members of the Black members who identify as Black in our community as well as non-Black, we had an opportunity, I would say almost a privilege, to really get close to the experiences of folks in our community. We held a number of listening sessions, both large and small, some of them very focused, some of them broader. We also had a survey that the community responded to. And so really understanding what the experience is like for a Black person who lives in Amherst, Massachusetts. There's sort of an intimacy that in a locality where that can occur. And I think that those stories, as they as they come alive and as they come out of the shadows is really, really powerful. And so we hope that through that experience here in Amherst, people are getting a sense of what does reparative justice look like and what are the possibilities. We know that what we are doing here in Amherst will never be a federal reparation policy or even a state reparation policy. But we hope, as Dr. Shabazz said, that we'll be giving folks a taste of what healing can come through a local process that can then build momentum for the real and full and true reparations to occur.
We have to take a quick break, folks. I really appreciate you being on, but we'll get right back to the conversation. You're listening to What is Owed, a special round table on reparations here on Evening Words. I'm your host, Dr. James Peterson. We're live on WRD 900 AM, 96.1 FM. We are in conversation with Miss Michelle Miller, who's former town councilor of Amherst, Massachusetts, and chair of the Town of Amherst African Heritage Reparation Assembly, and Dr. Amakal Shabazz, who is professor and undergraduate program director in the W.B. Du Bois Department of Afro-American Studies at the University of Massachusetts. We'll be back after these messages.
It's the WURD Hot 60. Hot 60. Here's the hottest 60 seconds you missed this week on The Source.
When roadblocks are deliberately sent to deter and make you stumble, walk anyway into the destiny designed for you. As we round out Black History Month, remember who you are, why you are here, and make your ancestors proud, because we are a people that were bound together and had to live in the worst conditions to get here, and still we rise. Let no one defeat you with mere words when genius is embedded in your DNA strand. It is easy to let fear and uncertainty hold fast our feet like a mouse on a glue trap, but hear this. If you can dare to dream and then do the work necessary, you will be able to accomplish whatever that dream is beyond your wildest imagination. Make a plan, adjust as needed, form alliances along the way. Do not ever get comfortable and push yourself to continue growing. Be kind to others and yourself, because when grace is freely given, it is freely received.
And that's the hottest 60 seconds this week on The Source on WURD, Progressive Black Talk Media.
Family Therapy Vignette Moments with Dr. Lucille Ijoy.
Make voting a family affair. Include the children. Help them to care. We register, we vote, we must. I register, I vote, I must. Yes, indeed, everybody. Voting is a family affair. We gather together, no matter the weather. Stand tall now. Don't you waste your vote. Some folks, you know, they might not be woke, but not you, because voting is a family affair. This is Dr. Lucille Ijoy. Register, register, register. We vote, we must. Come on now. Register, we vote, we must. This is Dr. Lucille Ijoy.
Staying active and healthy as we age starts with strong bones. To keep your bones strong, you need calcium, vitamin D, and regular exercise. A bone density test called DEXA helps detect low bone mass and bone disease called osteoporosis. If you're 65 or older, Medicare provides free bone density tests every 2 years. Ask your doctor to schedule yours. For more information on how to be bone strong, visit pathtogoodbonehealth.org.
In honor of Black History Month, WURD, in collaboration with First World Theater, presents Diamonds of the Diaspora, Black political figures and influencers in their own words. Crystal Bird Fawcett was the first African-American woman elected to state legislature. She represented the 18th District of Philadelphia, which in 1938 was mostly white. According to Phila.gov, among her many accomplishments, Fawcett served President Franklin Roosevelt as a civil defense advisor on race relations, was instrumental in the development of the Swarthmore College Institute on Race Relations, and was a founder of what later became Philadelphia's World Affairs Council. Fawcett served on the American Friends Service Committee as a member of the Interracial Committee. She made hundreds of speeches about race to mostly white audiences.
White students
both high school and college. Think of the American Negro as being not quite human, and that whatever advantages and privileges he enjoys are due solely to the magnanimity of white people. They do not seem to realize that these advantages and privileges are due to him as a native-born American citizen and as a normal human being, at least as normal as the attitude of the white world permits him to be.
That's a quote by Crystal Bird Fawcett, performed by Ashley Spearman from First World Theater. This Black History Month, we honor the work and political influence of Crystal Bird Fawcett. This Black History Month vignette is brought to you by Comcast, the Free Library of Philadelphia, and Bristol Riverside Theater. Celebrating Black excellence worldwide and bringing joy and power to the people. This is WURD 900 AM and 96.1 FM, Philadelphia.
Streaming online on wordradio.com and the Word Radio app.
And now back to Evening Words with Dr. James Peterson on WURD, Progressive Black Talk Media.
Welcome to What is Owed, a special reparations roundtable on Evening Words. I'm your host, Dr. James Peterson. We are live on WRD 900 AM, 96.1 FM, in deep conversation with Miss Michelle Miller, former town councilor of Amherst, Massachusetts, and chair of the Town of Amherst African Heritage Reparation Assembly, and Dr. Amakal Shabazz, professor and undergraduate program director in the W.B. Du Bois Department of Afro-American Studies at the University of Massachusetts. Dr. Shabazz, Ms. Miller, welcome back to Evening Words. So you all both know this is like normally talk radio, and when I have the privilege of having you back, we'll have a little bit more time and space, and you'll be able to take calls. But I'm getting a lot of comments and calls coming in that we can't take right now. One commenter says, this is an important topic. I'm just not sure there can be reparative justice for slavery. We don't even have full acknowledgement of the multi-generational consequences of slavery and Jim Crow and et cetera. I appreciate that this is a cause worth fighting for and is necessary to support the conversation, but you know, is this person, and these are other folks who are making this comment, is this ever going to go anywhere? Now, I'm trying to also make clear to folks that some of the people that we're talking to have already done the work and it's already done the research and already showed some of these connections. But I asked this same question of previous guests, as you might have heard, like, what do we say to the folks in our own community? I'm talking about the Black community here, or who are going to be naysayers here, like, this is not worth it. It's never going to amount to nothing. What is your response to those kinds of questions and comments from our listening audience?
Dr. Shabazz, please take that.
Well, I think there's a number of changes that we're tangibly seeing, and Michelle Miller has been at the heart and at the center of a number of them. For example, we have descendants here in Amherst that go back multiple generations. They formed a nonprofit called Ancestral Bridges and have been bringing out a lot of how the Black community, as it did exist in here in this community, the kinds of things they endured, the kinds of progress they made, the beauty, the joy that they had in the community. And just recently, they've named a historic area, the West Side Historic District, that for years their own family had worked for that kind of recognition of this historic African American part of the town, and just was ignored decade after decade after decade. It's finally come about. There are other instances I could raise, but the point really being tangible changes are happening. And it's not all just in relation to slavery. Slavery is the original sin. It is the moment that we focus on, but we understand that slavery by another name is all that happened after 1865. We've got records in the research that Michelle Miller talked about earlier that was done to get us to the point of creating a town commission. We found out about deed restrictions. We pulled up actual deeds from the 1950s of houses that are still standing right in our community, where it was said you must never sell this house to a Black person.
Wow.
Okay? This is the redlining. This is the way of stopping intergenerational wealth from being built. This is all part of the continuation of that legacy of slavery. So first and foremost, just this acknowledgement, this bringing it out, people confronting it, apologizing and reckoning with this kind of damage and harm that has been perpetrated down to living times, down to our own times, that is a step in the arc of the reparative process. And there's still more to come. I'll put it there.
Ms. Miller, do you want to weigh in on that piece?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll speak as a white person active in this movement. It was a real reckoning for me to realize that I had so little education about the real history of the United States. And so I think as we bring this history forward, and it's community by community, it's in the individual states as well as in the country, I think more people will be brought into the movement in ways that, these questions arise in my family, the folks that I interact with, particularly before I sort of came out of the white bubble that I was in for basically my entire life. Why this isn't going to go anywhere, or why are we doing this? And I really point to the history, understanding, educating. We are doing a lot of work here in our community to educate the folks, to listen to the voices in our community, all the way from the youth up until, all folks in our community. And so I think that it's a process, and that as we continue to bring these things into the forefront, hearts and minds, I hope, will change as we move forward in the process.
Another question for both of you here.
One more thing, if I could follow up.
Go ahead, Doc. No, go ahead.
As a result of this kind of local work that people like Michelle Miller have led and lead here in Amherst, things going on in Boston, in Northampton, in Cambridge, in other towns here in Massachusetts, we've gotten to a point now where our entire congressional delegation supports reparations. The bill H.R. 40, the companion bill in the Senate filed by Cory Booker, both of our senators, Warren and Markey, support reparations.
Wow.
All of our congressional reps, especially our own congressman in this area, Jim McGovern, are all 100%. Jim McGovern's gone so far, based upon coming to some of our sessions and talking and hearing from the community, has asked President Joe Biden to move forward with his power to create at the executive level, to create a reparations commission that could do the study, that could begin to prepare the proposals for Congress to fund of what we really need, what needs to happen in the way of reparations. So again, this little local level work that we're doing, if you wish to say, has ripple effects. We're building something here that is tangibly changing things.
No, thank you for that. I guess this question is especially for that next step at the federal level, Dr. Shabazz, and for you as well, Michelle. Like, should reparations focus exclusively on repairing or restoring what is owed from the institution of chattel slavery, full stop? Or should it encompass these other aspects that we're talking about in terms of anti-black discrimination, Jim Crow laws, redlining, disparities in the GI Bill, disparities with Social Security, all the things, health disparities, all the things that as Dr. Shabazz referred to them as slavery by another name. Is there some strategy that we should be thinking about, especially at that federal level, to limiting it just to what is owed based upon institutional transatlantic slave trade, or should we open it up, so to speak, to all the other forms of discrimination that emanated out of that particularly a tragic historical moment?
Yeah, all of the above. I think that the work that the economists have done in terms of some type of wealth transfer some actual material compensatory wealth transfer policy. That's one crucial part of it. Closing the wealth gap. That's one crucial part of it. But we also do envision, and look at the work many are doing. Notably, Mary Frances Berry and VP Franklin, that look at a kind of a super fund idea, and how do we look at changing the institutional environment in terms of our hospitals and our healthcare system to help close the health gap of African descendant people in this country. Looking at the criminal justice system, how do we close the crime and punishment gap? Looking at mass incarceration and all of that. Looking at all of the different disparity areas, we've got to have that kind of outcome mindset in addition to what can happen from the wealth transfer piece.
Michelle, do you want to weigh in on this piece? Strategy in terms of one versus all?
I default to Dr. Shabazz on this. I don't know if maybe the viewers would like to hear a little bit about how we thought about eligibility. Dr. Shabazz could speak about that. I think in a locality it looks different perhaps from at the state and federal level. If that's of interest, Dr. Shabazz could certainly speak to that.
That is of interest to us, sure. Yeah, how did you all determine? This is one of the many questions we've been asking our guests, is about determining eligibility. And here's the sort of, what animates that question for me is, once this work is going to happen, and it's already happening in Amherst, in Evanston, Illinois, in the state of California. We're starting it here in Philadelphia. It's already happening, so I want to be clear on that. But I'm concerned about how folks will determine eligibility for it and what are going to be the hurdles and the hoops. I mean, you all both know that for a lot of opportunities in this country, there are barriers to access that disproportionately impact communities of color and communities from working class and so-called poor class folks. And so I'm always curious to the eligibility piece of this, because I think ultimately once this great work is done, that is going to be a hurdle that I hope folks will have support and advocacy for managing in terms of getting access to those benefits once it's fully realized. So how are you determining that in Amherst?
We did. I'm immersed in the research on this for decades, but it was really in conversations with Michelle Miller that she gave me the kind of visual and spatial way of thinking about this in terms of these concentric circles. At the center, of our way of thinking about this really is the descendants of slavery who are resident in Amherst and identify as African Americans. So there's a lineage standard, there's an identity standard, or self-identification standard, and there is a residency standard. And so at the center of that are this set of families that do still live here, that are involved in our community. Honestly speaking, though, it's in the low double digits. Wow. We're talking about a very small number of people, but they ought to be held at the center of focus, because
that's right.
They represent that history, that living experience of the harm of slavery over generations right here in our community. So we take that, but then we widen out our way of seeing it to those who have moved here in later years. I arrived in Amherst in 2007. Some come here in the 1970s, the 1960s, what have you, from other places, but we come from places where our families have been have this history going back into being enslaved. And my family, it's in the state of Louisiana. And even before Louisiana was a state, when it was owned by the French or claimed by the French. So I have that. My people, I can take you to the 1865, to the freed people in my own ancestry. So I live here now, so I meet the residency standard. I have the lineage that I can prove. And I do identify as black. And if you look 12 years back, 20 years back, if you look from the day I was born, people have identified, and I've been identified as black. So I meet all of those kinds of standards, but I live here in Amherst now. So I'm at another level of the circle. But then even wider than that, some of the folks that live here that have come from Cabo Verde, from Cape Verde, from Nigeria, from Jamaica, from Trinidad, from South Africa, from wherever. And we have a very diverse cosmopolitan black population here due to the colleges and whatnot. We don't lock them out of the conversation. They're in the circle as well that we hold this attention to, because the Jamaicans, the Haitians that live here, they come out of an experience of slavery too. They come out of the harms of it too. And they've experienced things even from the times their families have been in the United States. So again, we look at these concentric circles and we hold space for all of that African descendant community to be looked at, to be understood, to be helped over the harms of this transatlantic, this global process of anti-black racism that we've all experienced.
Thank you for that. We only have a couple of minutes left here, unfortunately. I really do hope you both will consider coming back on for our regular segment on these issues. So, you know, we haven't even launched the Philadelphia Task Force yet, but we're in the process of getting ready to launch it. Could you both take a couple of minutes or a minute and a half or so each and share what you might think would be some best practices for a reparations task force that's just getting started? You know, the council members have launched it. It's policy now. They've identified 2 community co-chairs. They understand they want to make it community centered. But what are some tips, some strategies, best practices that you would share with them for this important journey that they're about to take on behalf of the citizens of Philadelphia?
Oh, I'll just start by saying I listened to the entire program and listening to the council people that you had on from Philadelphia. It was extraordinary and very insightful, and so there's already clearly so much wisdom and foundation that is there. I would say that, again, speaking from the white community, so to speak, that there may be an opportunity in terms of educating folks in Philadelphia, folks like my parents who are white, who live in Philadelphia in Rittenhouse Square, and who have, although they support my work, have some questions about reparations and what it means. And so I think there's a lot that can be done in terms of education for the white community as they set off on their process. And so that's my, in addition to some of the other things we talked about, but they seem to already have all of that very, very well established.
No, it's a good point, Ms. Miller. We are going to need allies in this work. There's no question in the city of Philadelphia. It's going to take a lot more education, but we do need those allies. Dr. Shabazz, you want to weigh in on this? Some tips and strategies.
That's huge, man. With the city of sisterly and brotherly love, y'all coming in, that's going to bring out the brotherly and sisterly love all over the country. So, and I just want to say, tell Gautier and Brooks, council members Gautier and Brooks, that Anthony Phillips is ready. He's ready to get involved. He's ready to support the task force work. James, he's a student in our doctoral program on his way out, just about done. So
is he at Temple, Dr. Shabazz? Is he at Temple?
He's at UMass.
So he's at UMass. But he's from Philly.
Everything.
Okay. Send him here. Send him here, Doc. Send him here. Send him here. We welcome him with open arms. Matter of fact, Doc, tell him he could be on this program and talk about his work.
Done.
Listen, I really enjoy being in conversation with you both and appreciate all your time. It's about time for me to open this up for some callers, but I really, really hope that you will both continue to listen while we're on for the next couple seconds, but also come back on. We're going to have a regular segment called the Reparations Report, and we need folks who are doing the work to chime in here for shorter segments, of course, but to help us move the process along here in the great city of Philadelphia. Thank you both so much for joining us here on What is Owed, the special reparations roundtable on Evening Words. You're listening to Evening Words. I'm your host, Dr. James Peterson. We are wrapping up the guest portions of What is Owed, a reparations roundtable. On tonight's program, we've been very deep into conversation with Miss Michelle Miller, who's former town councilor of Amherst, Massachusetts, and chair of the town of Amherst African Heritage Reparation Assembly, and Dr. Al-Makal Shabazz, an outstanding and towering scholar in the discipline, professor of undergraduate and undergraduate program director in the W.B. Du Bois Department of Afro-American Studies at the University of Massachusetts. We'll be back after these messages.
Okay, remember what I told you. Be your own boss, love yourself, level up.
Level Up is back. In celebration of Women's History Month, Level Up returns highlighting Black women-owned businesses who are making a difference in our communities. In partnership with WVON Chicago and KJLH Los Angeles, this signature initiative gives you the opportunity to nominate your business or one of your favorite Black woman-owned businesses a chance to become one of 5 finalists who will be featured in a Shark Tank-like style pitch party where the winner will be selected by a panel of independent corporate sector judges and will receive a grand prize valued at $5,000. Get ready! The submission process opens soon. Stay tuned to WURD for more exciting details. Level Up 2024 is brought to you by Comcast, the Pennsylvania Lottery, Keystone First, and Bank of America.
Level up, level up, level up.
In this season of love, and during all seasons of the year, the Pennsylvania Lottery is the only state lottery consistently showing love to its older citizens. The PA Lottery started as a way to fund programs for older Pennsylvanians. They've contributed over $30 billion to various programs. The money goes to programs for property tax and rent rebates, free or reduced rides, low-cost prescriptions, home care services, and more. In fact, the PA Lottery is the only state lottery whose proceeds benefit older citizens. Spread the love and get your lottery tickets today. Players must be 18 or older. Please play responsibly. Problem gambling? Helpline 1-800-GAMBLER.
I need a tax preparer. How should I choose one?
Using a paid tax preparer this year? Before paying someone to do your taxes, make sure they're qualified. Ask about their fees, experience, and training. Check with the Better Business Bureau. Avoid anyone who promises a higher refund. And review your tax return before you sign it. And make sure your preparer signs it too. For more tips, visit irs.gov and search Choosing a Preparer.
And now back to Evening Words with Dr. James Peterson on WURD 900 AM and 96.1 FM Philadelphia.
Welcome back to Evening Words. I'm your host, Dr. James Peterson. We are live on WRD 900 AM, 96.1 FM. The phone lines are open, folks. Although I know folks are already on hold, the phone lines are full, but they are open. If you want to join the conversation, please give us a call, 215-634-8065. What you've been experiencing here this evening is a program that we're calling What is Owed? A reparations roundtable here on Evening Words. And as I've been mentioning throughout the program, some of the guests that you've been listening to, we hope to have back on for a more regular segment on reparations. First, here we'll take Reverend Joe Williams. Reverend Joe Williams, welcome to Evening Words.
Good evening, Dr. Peterson, to your producer.
Good evening,
I would like
Rev.
to do the same thing. I like to plant this seed. There's too much vital information that most people need to know, both young and old. The station, if the station will consider doing Black history all year long, I want to give them more 15 minutes a day, whatever it might be, because I like to spotlight some of the young Black pharmacists, the first wave of pharmacists in Philadelphia. I was almost part of that group, but I wasn't smart enough. But anyhow, Sunway drugstores back in that time was like Rite Aid is today. Mm-hmm. But it was 6 druggists, different stores. When I was working in, there was some right, all of them could have been doctors, but some of them wives didn't want to take that 12-year course with them. But I think our young people should know how we have some brilliant guys. These guys are the geniuses. Mm-hmm. So they should be a pharmacist, because the first, so I worked at the Black pharmacist. When he showed up, the manager told him, he said, that the Bloom Closet is over there. He said, no, I'm the pharmacist. And the manager looked at him and said, you mean an end pharmacist? So a lot of that people should know about.
Thank you so much, Reverend Joe. I appreciate it. We're going to stay on the phone lines. We're going to go to Charles from Sharon Hill. Charles, welcome to Evening Words. This is the What is Owed Reparations Roundtable special on our program tonight.
Yes, that is a deep conversation. I know my family is from the South Carolina. Mm-hmm. Came out of slavery from there. Then That's my father's side, and my mother's side came out from the Virginia side of it, straight after slavery. Now, they had promised us a 50 acres a mule, right? So what is that?
40 acres. 40 acres in a mule.
40 acres.
Yeah.
I'm adding some more to it because it took them so long.
That's right.
Right? So now I'm looking at all these many years that my family haven't made any, they didn't get their reparation. We have filed for it many, many times that I'm not sure if they kept a good record on it. I had filed when I was young, and I was using the name of just Pearson. Then I add a Bay onto it to represent that not all of us came from over that part of Africa, but from this part of Africa. And when I had mentioned that, when they were talking about reparation before, they said, "Oh, you're not a part of the black slavery here." I was like, "Yes, my family was a part of the black slavery here. But because I made a change to the name, now you're going to exclude me from it?" Now, how about all the other people that has been traveling over here after the slavery part that have nothing to do with the African-American slavery over in this part of this hemisphere, or the United States, I'm going to say? How do you split the money and making sure that we get ours? It doesn't belong to them. They have to go back to their country and get the reparations that they owe from their country, but not from over here. So I would like to get a better understanding of that, because I had to work my heart out to make the little bit that I do have, and I'm 65 now, and I'm just barely making it. And a lot of my brothers and sisters and cousins, I'm just barely making it after all these years, because nothing was handed down to us. We had to work for everything.
That's right.
That's my question.
Thank you, Brother Charles. Let me answer that before I go to my next call. First of all, the value of 40 acres and a mule, and there's different estimates, but the value of 40 acres and a mule for those initial 40,000 enslaved people that it was promised to would be worth about $640 billion today. If you extrapolate that out and think about the actual full number of folks who were enslaved, that number for reparations could be in the trillions of dollars, right? But the value of that initial rule, right, from Special Field Order 15 to give 400,000 acres of property to black families in these 40-acre plots, that's about $640 billion today, and that's just for a small portion of it. So I appreciate that. And Brother Charles, I'm going to defer to our experts in terms of answering your question. That question was answered by various experts on today's programming, and I'm paraphrasing here, but essentially, being included in the group that would be restored through the reparations processes that are already being enacted would require some kind of process through which individuals would trace their legacy in their family to those who were enslaved in the transatlantic slave trade here in the United States. Now, Dr. Shabazz was talking about some other models for thinking about other ways and maybe broadening that out. But in the main, you got to be able to trace your legacy. And what was great about what Ms. Camilla Moore talked about was that they're also pursuing the development of offices or a bureau that is specifically designed to provide the genealogical support to do that research and authenticate that lineage. And you'll remember, for those who've been listening to all of what is owed this evening, we were talking about the American freedman and how that's a legal designation that historically helps us to calibrate that genealogical research from our history into the current moment. So I hope I answered that question. We're going to stay on the phone lines and go to Clyde from South Philadelphia. Clyde, welcome to Evening Words. Our special programming tonight is What is Owed, our Reparations Roundtable.
Thank you for taking my call. Two of the questions that I have is this here. Back in 2000, Johnny Cochran assembled a team of lawyers to take this to the Supreme Court. So my question is, why hasn't anybody from our realm taken up this fight? Now, I know Professor Ogilvy had passed away. I think he passed away last year. But you have 3 or 4 other prominent people that was prepared to take this to the Supreme Court. Not only that, you know, you have a Virginia. It's a seminary down in Virginia that is actually giving away reparations. And I mean, these blueprints are here, and it just boggles my mind after 20 years that we're just starting this fight again. And even before that, you know, I believe it was Ivy Davis, Paul Robeson, a couple of other people. You can. The book is out of print, and I just happened to listen to Saviour's Day yesterday, and Mr. Farrakhan brought the book up. It's called "We Charge Genocide."
Yep.
So they actually took this to the UN. So all these parallels have been set up, and it's just mesmerizing me why people are just getting this thing back together. It just mesmerized me. It's just weird. You understand where I'm coming from, because if Johnny Cochran and these 5 or 6 lawyers that he had, and these was prominent lawyers, you know, they had major lawsuits that they won back then. Why hasn't anybody taken up this fight? They had the blueprint. They had everything ready to go, and then he mysteriously died.
Yeah, thank you, Brother Clyde, for the call. I'm gonna answer your question. You know, thank you for the question too. One, just to be clear, like folks like Dr. Shabazz and Camilla Moore and Jonathan Burgess, if I didn't make that clear in the interviews, I apologize, but they've been doing this work for some time now. We're seeing some of the fruits of that, but they've been at it for a while. You know, we weren't able to have Dr. Sandy Darity on here, and he's not a lawyer, but he is an economist. He's an expert in reparations. He's been doing the work for a long time, since folks like Johnny Cochran are alive, since Ogletree was alive. By the way, losing giants like Johnny Cochran, Ogletree, Lonnie Guinier, Derek Bell, those are setbacks, bro. When we lose like great black lawyers who are interested and invested in this work with the kind of pedigree they have in terms of arguing cases in court, that those are setbacks, whether we want to acknowledge them as such or not. But losing some of those giants, and we are. You talking about Ogletree, Guinier, Derek Bell, and Cochran. You talking about losing legal giants. So those are not small losses in this effort. But if I was unclear with the interviews with the guests that we had this evening, these folks have been at it for a while. I think the real question is if you want to talk about momentum and movements, the real question is are we going to get behind them and be supportive? You know, I already have a lot of people saying this, why are we talking about this, or this is not going anywhere. And honestly, like, to me, the attitude, the position that we should be taking is, how do we support the council members and the community members who are doing this work here in the city of Philadelphia? Like, that's, to me, what it should be about. And I hope folks can take that kind of constructive approach to it. But losing those kinds of legal giants, I think, is challenging. But remember, there's a lot of work that has to be done, right? We have to raise awareness. We have to educate folks. We have to educate our own community. And everybody thinks they know about it, but we got to educate our own community, raise awareness. You know, you're seeing these local movements manifest before the federal piece of it because people understand that all politics are local. And people are able to make a different kind of impact working from the local up through into these higher levels. And so I want to respect the work that the folks are doing, but you're right. We've lost some legal giants, bro. And by the way, we won't recover from some of those losses, right? But this movement will be sustained by the people who are ready to roll their sleeves up and get to the work right now. We're going to stay on the phone lines. We're going to go to Howard from West Philly. Howard, welcome to Evening Words.
Yeah, thanks for taking the call. I really don't have a question about reparations because I always felt that reparations is really a simple math, adding, subtracting, and multiplication problem. But due to the ebb tide of resistance by race haters, it's made more difficult than what it is. It's not that difficult. And I want to close with this. The COVID virus 19 should be an example that it's not that deep. It's not. the benefits that were provided to the entire nation during COVID-19 should let people know it's not that difficult. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate the call. We're stay on the phone lines. This is somebody I've been wanting to hear from all day. Brother Obona, welcome to the What is Owed Reparations Roundtable episode of Evening Words. I'm sure you've been listening to the program, brother. Tell me your response.
Hey, I'm very impressed with the sister from the lawyer, man.
Camilla Moore, bro. Good Lord.
Camilla Moore. Look, first of all, people don't know that sister's either 27 or 28.
She's young. Yes.
Yo, and
a young giant, bro.
Now, if it wasn't for structural racism, we would have more sisters out there like that. But because of structural racism, we don't have sisters like her. She's one of the exceptions that was able to, come through all this stuff. The show was incredible, man. I think the most striking thing to me was two things. One, the fact that we have the studies.
That's right. That's right.
But if we don't have a council member or council members in place who are willing to turn these studies into policy by creating bills, it's all for naught. So check this out.
Well, just to be clear, like in Amherst, in Evanston, we didn't have a representative from Evanston, but in Amherst, Evanston, and in the state of California, they have research that is curated specifically to their regions, and I'm not sure if we have the specific information on that in the city of Philadelphia.
Well, we have a little. I mean, I talk about the home devaluation, so we do have some data that could be used. But the thing that I'm saying is this. There was a study on gun violence, right? It's going to all tie back in. There was a study that was done on gun violence. The study is like having a task force. So you had someone who was tasked with finding out what's the cause of gun violence. They do all the work, and they identify what the problems are, and at its root is structural racism, right? So then you got to have a legislator, a council member, who's willing to write legislation to address the problem that the study said that there is. So I'm afraid that if we don't have reparationist type council members, that they can come up with the remedy, but if they're not strong enough and willing to introduce it as policy, as legislation, what good is it going to be? You see what I'm saying? So,
I do. I just want, but see, so there's steps to it, right? They haven't even launched the task force yet. I don't want to get out in front of that. And here's my thing. And you and I, you and I have this conversation like every day. I mean, we're talking about this all the time. But I need for our whole community to be having the conversation with the regularity that you and I are having it. Because my thing is, are we going to just sit on the sidelines and critique everything that they're going to do? Or are we going to roll our sleeves up and support the effort to make it happen? Which one are we going to do?
Look, for example, all the findings that were found in California, 100% for them. But
1,100 pages worth of research, right, bro. Yes.
And guess what? We gotta want to read too. That's the other thing.
Come on! Don't get me started, bro. Don't get me started on that. Can we stay focused, please?
And this is technical reading that requires turning off the TV, turning off the radio,
that's right,
and studying this stuff. Like,
Bono, don't get me on a literacy piece, bro. We're talking about reparations. Let's stay on it.
This is all. Guess what? Structural racism is because of
our illiteracy rates are a result of structural racism. Yes.
It all ties in.
Yes.
So all I'm saying is that I enjoyed the show. A lot of what I heard, especially when the terms, we gotta learn these terms. American freedmen.
Bro, you were right about American freedmen. Okay, you were right about it.
And I'm pretty certain I was right about affirmative action.
Yes, my critique still maintains. You were right about affirmative action, but my critique still maintains for sure. For sure.
Can you let the people know about affirmative action and the fact that it still is in effect for those who are lineage-based?
Yeah, but hold on. No, there's a lot of caveats, bro. A lot of caveats.
It is.
So
and we should be pursuing all of the possibilities.
We should, bro. I really appreciate you listening,
man. And I appreciate you, man. You have been a blessing, man, to the city. And
man.
I'm telling you, man, for the people who listen to this show, if they really listen, they're going to be learning a lot of stuff, and we can use that information to move our community forward. The thing is, the lack of knowledge, our people perish, so we have to get the knowledge.
Yeah, and bro, can I just be honest with you? I'm learning too, bro. Okay,
I'm learning stuff every day.
Yes.
This is a lot of stuff that was done to us.
Yeah.
There's a lot to really read and digest and comprehend and then regurgitate with the resistance that we get. I get so much resistance.
Yep.
And it's like I gotta keep pushing. I think about Nat Turner. I think about Harriet Tubman, and I just say, you know what? Most of the people were against freedom, but shit, they still went forward.
Bro, that's what our California brothers and sisters said to me straight up, like, yo, okay, y'all don't have, it's already happening. You can say it's never gonna happen. It's already happening, and that's exactly what Camilla said. She was like, yo, it was a whole lot of people who didn't want to leave the plantation.
We got the power. We just got to put our mind to it. Learn the information, and then with one voice, reparations, period, because it's going to benefit everyone. Crime is going to decrease. You said everything is going to be beneficial because of economic stability, and we don't have it, and we haven't had it collectively forever.
That's right.
Well, when we had our own towns, we had it until they went
briefly before they went and destroyed them all.
Yeah. So we did have it, but come on, it's only but so much that you can lose without having to get repaid.
Thank you, brother. Listen, we're going to continue this conversation. As you know, I hope you'll come on and talk a little bit more about how do we start to break some of this stuff down and get to work on it. But I appreciate you chiming in as someone who's one of my interlocutors around reparations and different challenges in the city. I appreciate it, brother. You are listening to What is Owed, a special reparations roundtable episode of Evening Words. I'm your host, Dr. James Peterson. We are live on WRD, 900 AM, 96.1 FM. I don't know if we can take any more calls because we got folks on the line. But if you want to try, give us a call, 215-634-8065. We'll be back after these messages.
On Thursday, February 29th, join the Economy League of Greater Philadelphia for their 2024 Page Summit to be held at the historic Belmont Mansion beginning at 4 p.m. The Philadelphia Anchors for Growth and Equity Summit is a network where leaders from institutional procurement, community impact, supplier diversity, and minority business enterprises come together to learn from each other through collaborative dialogue and groundbreaking ideas. This evening will feature keynote speaker, City of Philadelphia Commerce Director Alba Martinez, and other esteemed panelists including Michael Pearson, Dr. Erica Patterson, Victoria Daniels, Jonathan Sterling, and Angelica Maytag. You can visit Eventbrite to register for this event or theeconomyleague.org. Go to events page for more information.
Teachers are diverse, skilled leaders, innovating to prepare students for our fast-changing world. Teaching shapes lives. Are you ready? Explore teaching at teach.org, supported by the U.S. Department of Education and 1 million teachers of color.
Stand with Word Radio as we continue to provide dynamic, progressive programming to inform and empower our people. We're living in unprecedented times, and we must stand together to protect and preserve Black Talk Media. Become a 4-Word member with the annual membership price of just $90 or a digital member starting at just $5 per month. If you're already a 4-Word member, sign up, family member, or a friend to help us continue making history. Start or renew your 4-Word membership today. Visit wordradio.com/4word or wordradio.com/membership. And now back to Evening Words with Dr. James Peterson on WURD, Progressive Black Talk Media.
Welcome back to What is Owed, a special roundtable on reparations episode of Evening Words. I'm your host, Dr. James Peterson. We are live on WRD, 900 AM, 96.1 FM. Shout out to everybody on Facebook. I did not forget you, fam. Shirley, Gary, Cynthia, Rosalind, Zen, Kenneth, Joanne, Malcolm, Harry, Garrick, Keith, Carol, Wendy, Phil, Norm, Cheryl, Charlie, W. Scott, Lucy Lou, and everybody else who I can't see on this list. Thank you all for listening and chiming in. I wish I had more time to spend with your questions and comments. We're going to go back to the phone lines. We have Brother Maurice from Southwest. Brother Maurice, welcome to Evening Words.
You got to make the time, brother.
What are you talking about, bro? Why don't you, brother? You know you got a lot of people on hold. Why don't we have your comment? And
my comment is, while I've been listening to the whole program, I had a dream I was talking to Medgar Evers for a few seconds in my head. Seemed like hours. And we were talking about how the white man will never give us the hand up. And I'm talking about the leftists. They will never give us the hand. They'll never want us in a better position than them or equal to them. And another thing, it's not only about race, it's about casting. You know, because the people that have power will not want to give it up or a chance of giving it up. That's why we have a Donald Trump today, because of that. And what I'm saying is reparations is a pipe dream, something that we can keep lingering on instead of moving ahead. We always talking about the past.
Hold on, Brother Maurice. No, brother, I want you to comment on this, Brother Maurice. Hold on. First of all, it's amazing to me that you brought up Medgar Evers. I just finished reading the latest biography called Medgar and Merle, and it moved me to tears. So incredible that you even brought up Medgar Evers. But let me say this: over the course of these hours, we're not talking to people who are talking about it or trying to live in the past. You realize that the people who were on from California, the people who were on, obviously we started in Philly, but we haven't launched that task force yet. But the people who were on from California, the people who were on from Philly, they're already doing the work, bro. Like, they have laws on the books. You know what I'm saying? Like, we didn't get evidence to Illinois on here, but they also have laws on the books. Like, they're already doing it. So you can say, like, it's living in the past or it's a pipe dream. Fine, sit down. You don't have to do the work. But please don't try to make that don't dismiss all the work that all these great people have been doing in their respective fields and in their regions over the last 10 years or so.
I'm not dismissing anything, but I remember this talk back in the 80s that it was right around the corner, and now we're into the 2000s, and they still they're giving us crumbs from a loaf of bread. People thinking, oh man, we're going to finally get that slice, and you're never going to get that slice. It's just talk. It's just talk. We'll give a few crumbs out to satisfy you for a moment, but if you thinking you getting this loaf of bread, guess what? The bag is sealed. I'll end with that.
Thank you, Brother Maurice. I appreciate the call. We're going to stay on the phone lines. We're going to Brother X from Chicago. Brother X, welcome to Evening Words.
Oh, thank you there, young blood. You're doing a great job,
thank
man.
You, brother. Thank you.
Well, I don't care what they say about you. I like it.
Okay. You know what? I got a secret, too. I don't care what they say about me either. But go ahead, brother.
Well, that's good, young blood. Look, Boss always played with Negroes. And when he can't play with Negroes, he hit them on the head, or he shoot them down, he put a rope around their neck, or he burned their towns down. Now, many of our people are being misled on this reparation talk. Reparation is not a city, state, or county issue. That is a federal government.
I agree with you. I agree with you, Brother X. I agree with you.
And that's what they want you to do. They want you to, they want to.
Hey, Brother X, you know, we had a couple of guests. We had a couple of guests who, because we're talking to everybody in the space right now, right? We had a couple of guests who essentially didn't really want to come on to talk about local efforts for reparations. They're like, it has to be at the federal level, and that's what they want to talk about. We're going to have those folks on these airways. We're going to keep working with them and get them on these airways to talk about that. So your opinion here really is important. But Brother X, go ahead.
I'm good with it. That is correct.
Yeah.
What if Texas don't do nothing? Alabama,
right.
Mississippi,
right.
Georgia, Florida.
Brother X, thank you. I got to stay on the phone lines, Brother X. I appreciate the call. Yes, sir. We're going to go to Cliff from Connecticut. Cliff, welcome to Evening Words.
Hey, brother Pastor, let's take my call. But listen, can we both agree that we're dealing with racism out of both parties? Can we both say that?
Are you asking whether or not there are racists in both political parties in America? Of course there is. What are you talking about?
No, exactly. And so overall what I'm saying is that for the notion that black people can be racist in this country, that is completely false, and it's a false narrative, and I want black folks to get out of that mentality and out of that thinking. We don't have the power or the resources to oppress anybody.
I agree with you on that, but you know, Brother Cliff, that different people define racism and race differently than you and I do. You know that.
Yeah, but for black people to define it is really alarming, and it's disgusting, and it's hurtful, it's disappointing. And we're talking about the black folks, man, that like Trump, you know what I mean, in terms of there's no racism that exists in this country, i.e. Uncle Tim, you know what I mean? It's ridiculous. But thanks for taking my call, brother. I digress.
I appreciate it, Cliff. So I am, I don't know if we have other calls, but I'm happy to close the show out myself here, folks. Okay, let's just recap a little bit about what is owed. And Brother Nick, I don't want to cut off any of the calls, but if you could just give me the last few minutes of the show, I would appreciate it. Excellent. Recap first. All right, the team here at WRD spent most of the day in D.C. speaking to officials elected and appointed in the Biden administration to launch the Word on Democracy effort, where we're going to be covering these campaigns and thinking together with this community, with our community, about what's going to be best for us going forward in and through this election season. Shout out to all of the hosts, Brother Shamari, Sister Tanya, our Brother Solomon, and all the great guests that they spoke to, and all of the engineers and Ashanti and everybody on the ground, doing the work over there. That's a Herculean effort to do a full day of live broadcasts from Washington, D.C., at the White House, by the way, folks. So kudos to the WRD team and for everybody who worked on that. For the last several weeks here, the Evening Words team has been working diligently to prepare this reparations roundtable for you. And when I say diligently, I mean we've been having meetings, we've been reaching out to folks from all over the place, because one, we understand that it's an important moment and there is some tremendous potential inherent in the launching of a reparations task force here in the city of Philadelphia. And I want to encourage people to think positively and constructively about how we can support that effort. But anytime you have a new effort, or if you have an initiative like this that has the potential to impact all of us, and I know it seems like it's just for black folks who were descended from enslaved Africans, but really, when you look at the data and the research on reparations, folks, and look at what it means to make the descendants of enslaved Africans in this country whole, that does advance the economy for this entire nation and really for the world. I mean, we'll go into that as we start to think and talk a little bit more about that, but we started locally to identify and support the folks who are leading the effort on the council, city council side. We're looking forward to getting the community co-chairs on, and they'll be on with Councilmember Gaudier this Saturday on City Council Live on Saturday. We hope to have them here on Evening Words to continue that local conversation. And then we moved around the nation to talk to activists, scholars, and organizers and legal, astute legal minds about what the process has been for those folks in those task force that have already made progress in their respective regions. So just to be clear, the work of that California task force is done, which is why you're hearing Ms. Camilla Moore talk about laws that are being proposed and that are on the books in the state to execute the work that was done through the research and development of their task force. That's very, very important. I'm sorry to not make that clear. It is a similar, if not comparable, situation in the small town of Amherst, Massachusetts, where organizers and scholars, again, have come together to work with elected officials. And Dr. Shabazz said something that was really incredible there. He said that the work in Amherst around reparations have become contagious, and that other small towns in and around Massachusetts have taken up the mantle of that work, and that they have applied enough pressure to all of their elected officials, representatives and senators, to be on board with reparations. That's the kind of work that we're talking about. That's what gets me excited about this movement and about the potential here in the city of Philadelphia. So I want to thank all of my guests, council members Brooks and Gaudier, Ms. Camilla Moore and Jonathan Burgess, Dr. Amakal Shabazz, and Ms. Michelle Miller. I want to thank all of the guests for taking time out of their busy schedules to join us over these last few hours to share their information and best practices and to galvanize all of us to conscript ourselves to doing this work right here in the city of Philadelphia. You've been listening to What is Owed, the special Reparations Roundtable episode of Evening Words. I'm your host, Dr. James Peterson. We've been live here on WRD 900 AM, 96.1 FM. I'll be back in your ears tomorrow, God willing.